Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a place that's somehow darker than a coal mine, smellier than a stagnant pond, and filled with more hidden dangers than a chemist's laboratory. Welcome to Victorian London, where the air itself is heavy enough to chew and hygiene is largely a theoretical concept. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy drifting off to mildly disturbing, deeply factual history. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you, and burrow into your blankets. Have you ever wondered what life was really like in the great smog of the 19th century? Was it all elegant carriages and high tea, or was it more like burning lungs, greasy soot coating your skin, and a sky that looked like bruised copper? How did people survive in a city where breathing was a health hazard and the sun was just a rumor? Let's find out. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1880, in the heart of the world's largest metropolis. But as you open your eyes, you might wonder if it is morning, evening, or the middle of the night. You step out of your front door, and you are immediately hit by the Pea Souper. This isn't the gentle, romantic mist of the countryside. This is a wall, a thick, suffocating blanket that presses down upon the rooftops, sealing the inhabitants into a world of perpetual twilight. It has a colour that defies nature, a sickly bruised yellow, sometimes deepening into a pea green or a sludgy brown. It swirls around the street lamps, reducing their gaslit glow to mere smudges of orange bioluminescence floating in a sea of murk. This fog is man-made. It is the exhaust breath of a million coal fires. Every house you pass, from the stately townhomes of Mayfair to the crowded tenements of the East End, is burning bituminous coal to keep the winter chill at bay. From countless chimney pots, columns of thick black smoke rise up, eager to escape, only to be trapped by a layer of warm air sitting atop the cold city, pushing the smoke back down into the streets. Take a breath. Can you taste it? The air here is a physical entity. It is a cocktail of particulate matter, soot, ash, and tar. These microscopic particles hang suspended in the water vapor, creating a suspension that is heavier than air. When you inhale, you are coating the delicate lining of your throat with a fine layer of carbon. But there is more. The coal used in Victorian hearths is rich in sulfur. When burned, it releases sulfur dioxide, which mixes with the moisture in the fog to create a weak, aerosolized sulfuric acid. You are walking through a cloud of acid. Notice the taste in your mouth. It is metallic, coppery, like sucking on a dirty penny. It leaves a greasy film on your tongue and teeth. If you were to take a clean white handkerchief and wipe your face after just 10 minutes of walking, the linen would come away streaked with grey and black grime. This is the London particular, a soot that settles on everything. It settles on the railings, turning them slick and black. It settles on the stone facades of the cathedrals, turning white marble into charcoal-coloured monoliths. It settles on the sheep grazing in the nearby parks, turning their white wool a dingy, sad grey. Walking through this fog is a lesson in sensory deprivation. The city of London, usually a cacophony of commerce, feels strangely muffled. The dense air absorbs sound. The clip-clop of horse hooves on the cobblestones sounds distant and flat, as if coming from underwater. You might hear the rumble of a carriage, but you cannot see it until the horses are nearly upon you, looming out of the yellow haze like spectres. Drivers are forced to dismount and lead their horses by the bridle, walking blindly, feeling for the curb with their boots to ensure they do not wander onto the pavement, or worse, off the edge of the dock and into the Thames. There is a sense of isolation here. You are surrounded by millions of people, yet you are completely alone in your own bubble of visibility, which extends perhaps only 3 feet in front of your face. You pass other pedestrians as shadows. A top hat emerges from the gloom, followed by a dark overcoat, and then dissolves again into the yellow swirl. Eye contact is impossible. Recognition is impossible. The fog erases identity. The texture of the air is gritty. Your eyes begin to water, stinging from the sulfur. You blink and your eyelashes feel heavy. You pull your scarf tighter across your nose and mouth, attempting to filter out the worst of the particulates. But the smell penetrates the wool. It is the smell of wet coal, of burning wood, of ancient river mud, and the faint, underlying scent of industrial rot. In the late afternoon, the fog deepens. The gas lamps are lit early, but they do little to pierce the gloom. The light refracts off the water droplets and soot particles, creating halos of diffuse illumination that reveal nothing. It is a world without edges. The corners of buildings are softened. The spires of churches are erased. The ground beneath your feet is slick with a mixture of condensed fog and the relentless grime of the street. Your leather boots squelch on the pavement, leaving footprints in the thin layer of black slime that coats every horizontal surface. This is not a temporary weather event. In the 1880s, a pea souper could last for days, sometimes weeks. It would settle into the valley of the Thames and refuse to move. People would live their entire lives in this half-light. Children would grow up with rickets, their bones soft from a lack of sunlight. The sun, when visible at all, appears only as a dull, copper coin hung low in the sky, shedding no warmth and casting no true shadows. As you walk, you feel the dampness seeping through your layers of wool and cotton. It is a chilling damp, one that works its way into the joints. You can feel the moisture collecting on your collar, mixing with the soot to form a cold, dirty paste against your neck. You reach out to steady yourself against a brick wall, and your gloved hand comes away black. There is no cleanliness here. The city is stained. Even indoors, there is no escape. The fog is insidious. It seeps through the cracks in the window frames, under the doors, and down the chimneys. It is inside the theatres, where the audience can barely see the stage. It is inside the hospitals, hovering over the beds of patients whose lungs are already failing. It is inside the great halls of Parliament, blurring the faces of the lawmakers who debate the very industry that produces this choking shroud. You stop for a moment at a street corner. The air is still. There is no wind to clear the smoke. It simply hangs, suspended, accumulating hour by hour. Every breath you take is a labour. You can feel the weight of the air in your chest. It is a slow, rhythmic suffocation, accepted by the population as the price of progress, the price of warmth, the price of living in the centre of the industrial world. And as night falls, the yellow turns to a deep, impenetrable black, and the city disappears entirely, leaving only the smell of sulphur and the taste of coal dust on your lips. You push back your heavy oak chair and walk toward the door of the dining room, but the morning light catching the wallpaper makes you pause. It is a masterpiece of Victorian interior design. The pattern is intricate, trellises of ivy, ferns, and stylized floral motifs, rendered in a green so vivid, so deep and luminous that it seems to glow with an inner fire. This is Scheele's green. Invented by the Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele in 1775. This pigment took the Victorian world by storm. Before this, green dyes were dull and quick to fade. Scheele's green was brilliant. It didn't fade. It captured the essence of nature and brought it into the soot-stained homes of London. It is everywhere, on the wallpaper of the nursery, the fabric of the lady's dress, the leaves of the artificial flowers in the vase, and even the paint on the children's toys. But Scheele's green is not a vegetable dye. It is a copper, arsenic compound, cupric hydrogen arsenite. Let us look at the mechanics of the wallpaper. In 1880, the paper is not sealed with plastic or vinyl as it is today. It is essentially raw paper, printed with a pigment paste. The pigment is a powder mechanically pressed onto the surface. It is not chemically bonded. It sits there, friable and loose. As you stand in the room, observe the atmosphere. The house is damp. London is always damp. The heat from the coal fire fluctuates, causing the walls to expand and contract. Over time, the paper begins to flake. Microscopic particles of the green pigment detach from the wall. They float in the air currents of the room. They settle on the mantelpiece, on the carpet, and in the food you just ate. When the room is cleaned, the maid sweeps the carpet. She disturbs the dust. A cloud of arsenic rises into the air. You breathe it in, it lands on your skin, where it can cause contact dermatitis, sores that refuse to heal, looking like burns. But there is a more insidious mechanism at work, one that Victorian science is only just beginning to suspect. Behind the paper, on the cold, damp plaster of the wall, mold grows. The paste used to hang the wallpaper is made of flour and water, a perfect food source for fungus. In the dark, damp space between the wall and the paper, a specific mold, Scopulariopsis brevicolis, thrives. As this mold digests the wallpaper paste and the paper itself, it encounters the copper arsenite pigment. The mold metabolizes the arsenic. It processes the heavy metal and excretes it as a gas. This gas is trimethylacene. It has a faint garlic-like odor. You might have noticed it when you walked into a room that had been closed up for a while, a sweet, garlicky smell that you attributed to old cooking or damp wood. It is not. It is a neurotoxic gas. Imagine the nursery upstairs. The walls are covered in this delightful green print to amuse the children. The window is sealed tight to keep out the night air. The nanny puts the children to bed. The room is warm and humid from their breath. A mold behind the paper becomes active. It begins to pump out the gas. The children sleep. They breathe the gas all night for 10-12 hours. In the morning, they wake up lethargic. They have headaches. Their eyes are red and sore. They are pale and anemic. The doctor is called. He diagnoses them with diphtheria or weak constitution or perhaps nerves. He prescribes rest. Keep them in bed, he says. Keep them in their room. So the children stay in the room. They spend 24 hours a day inhaling the poison. They get worse. They begin to waste away. They develop paralysis in their limbs. And eventually many of them die. The cause of death is listed as natural causes or consumption. After the funeral, the parents, heartbroken, decide to redecorate. They strip the old paper, releasing massive clouds of arsenic dust in the process, and perhaps put up a new paper. Or perhaps they move, and a new family moves in, and the cycle begins again. This is the Green Death. It is a slow, silent killer that is painted onto the very boundaries of your existence. And it isn't just the walls. Look at the lady of the house. She is wearing a dress of emerald green tarlatan. The fabric is dusted with the same pigment. As she dances at a ball, the friction of the fabric shakes the powder loose. A visible cloud of green dust surrounds her. She is a walking poison dispenser. The candles flicker through the haze of arsenic she leaves in her wake. She feels faint, not from the corset, but from the inhalation. You turn away from the beautiful, deadly wall. You need fresh air. Or, at least, what passes for fresh air in this city. You need to leave the house. You walk to the hallway, pick up your heavy coat and your hat. You open the front door and step out onto the street. But as your boot hits the pavement, you realize that the ground beneath your feet is just as treacherous as the air you breathe and the food you eat. You are about to step into the London mud. You step off the doorstep and onto the pavement. The sound is wet and squelching. The surface of Victorian London is not solid. It is a semi-solid slurry that coats the city in a layer of filth, known simply as mud. But to call it mud is a polite euphemism. It implies wet soil. What lies beneath your boots is a complex biological and chemical compound, a substance entirely unique to a horse-drawn metropolis. London in 1880 runs on horses. There are over 300,000 horses working in the city daily, pulling omnibuses, hansom cabs, delivery drays and private carriages. A single healthy horse produces between 15 and 35 pounds of manure per Dalton Y. Do the math. Every single day, millions of pounds of dung are dropped onto the streets of London. There is an army of crossing sweepers, young boys and old men with brooms, who will clear a path for you for a penny, but they can only do so much. The manure accumulates. It mixes with the urine of the horses, creating an ammonia-rich sludge. Into this mixture falls the soot from the sky. The carbon particles bind with the organic waste, turning it black and sticky. Then there is the household waste. In the poorer districts, slops are still thrown into the gutters, dishwater, vegetable peelings, ash from the grate. It all churns together under the iron-rimmed wheels of the traffic. The texture of the street varies with the weather. In the rain, it is a soup, a black liquid slurry that splashes up when a carriage passes. It coats the hem of your trousers or your skirt. It soaks into the leather of your boots. The skirt dancing of Victorian women, lifting the hem with one hand to navigate the crossing, is a necessary survival skill. If the liquid touches your skin, it carries the bacteria of the gut, E. coli, salmonella, tetanus. A small scratch on your ankle splashed with street mud can lead to gangrene and amputation within a week. In the dry summer, the horror changes form. The mud dries. It turns into a fine dust. The wind picks it up now. The manure is airborne. You breathe it in. It coats the back of your throat. It settles on the food in the open-air markets. It gets into your eyes, causing ophthalmia, a severe eye infection common among Londoners. The city literally breathes its own waste. As you walk, pay attention to the sound. The streets are paved with different materials. The main thoroughfares are granite setts, cobblestones. They are durable but slippery when coated in the slime. The noise of iron wheels on granite is deafening, a constant roar that makes conversation on the street impossible. To dampen the noise, some wealthy streets are paved with wood blocks. These are quieter, yes, but wood is porous. It absorbs the horse urine. In the heat of August, the wood blocks sweat. They release a pungent, eye-watering stench of ammonia that hangs over the neighborhood like a cloud. The street itself is fermenting. You navigate carefully, eyes down. You are looking for the crossing, a line of slightly cleaner stones swept by a boy in rags. You toss him a coin, a farthing, perhaps. He catches it with hands that are caked in the very filth. He is sweeping. You reach the other side of the street. Your boots are heavy. You can feel the cold dampness of the mud seeping through the leather. You scrape your soles on the iron boot, scraper attached to the wall of a building, leaving a clump of black matter behind. You are heading towards the narrower alleys, the back streets where the real infrastructure of the city is exposed. You are heading towards the domain of the night soil men. Because all this waste has to go somewhere, and in Victorian London, a way is closer than you think. As the gas lamps flicker and the fog thickens into the true dark of night, a different kind of army emerges onto the streets of London. They do not march to the beat of drums, but to the muffled rumble of wooden cartwheels wrapped in rags to silence their approach. These are the night soil men, and they have come for the city's burden. To understand their task, you must first understand the architecture of the Victorian home's most private space, the privy. In 1880, while the wealthy might boast of a flushing water closet that empties directly into the newly constructed sewer system, the vast majority of Londoners rely on a much older, darker technology, the cesspool. Beneath the floorboards of the cellar, or in a brick-lined pit in the backyard, lies the cesspool. It is a chamber, often 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide, designed to hold human waste. It is not connected to a drain. It is simply a holding tank. For months, or sometimes years, the waste accumulates. It ferments. It stratifies. The liquid seeps slowly into the surrounding soil, often contaminating the water table, while the solid matter remains, compressing into a dense, heavy sludge. When the wind blows from the wrong direction, or when the air pressure drops before a storm, the smell rises. It comes up through the floorboards, a heavy, sickly sweet scent of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. It is the smell of the house breathing its own decay. When the cesspool is full, the night soil men are summoned. By law, they can only work between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m., so as not to offend the delicate sensibilities of the daytime public. Watch them work. There are usually 4 men to a team. They wear heavy leather aprons that are stiff with age and stained with the residues of 1,000 pits. They tie rags around their noses and mouths, though the seasoned veterans often work with bare faces, claiming the night air is more dangerous than the smell of the pit. They lift the stone slab or the wooden cover of the cesspool. The fumes that escape are visible in the cold night air, a ghostly, wavering vapor. One man, the holeman, descends into the pit. Sometimes he uses a ladder, sometimes he simply steps down into the semi-solid mass. He carries a shovel and a bucket. The work is rhythmic and silent. Scrape, lift, pour. The holeman shovels the waste into a wooden bucket. He passes it up to the rope man, who hauls it to the surface. The bucket is tipped into a wicker basket, or a large wooden tub carried by 2 other men. Listen to the sound of the slurry being transferred. It is a wet, heavy slap against the wood. The men move with a slow, deliberate cadence. They cannot rush. To spill is a disaster. To splash is a health hazard. They move like dancers in a macabre ballet, navigating the narrow, muddy alleyways with hundreds of pounds of raw sewage on their shoulders. They carry the tubs to the cart waiting in the street. The cart is essentially a watertight wooden box on wheels. They tip the contents in. The smell is overwhelming, a physical blow to the senses. It makes your eyes water. It tastes of copper and rot. But the night soil men do not flinch. They have lost their sense of smell years ago, burned away by the constant exposure to ammonia. This is dangerous work. The gases in a sealed cesspool can kill. Methane can explode if a candle is brought too close. Hydrogen sulfide can cause a man to lose consciousness in seconds, causing him to fall face first into the mire, where he will suffocate. Death by privy is a recorded cause of death in the coroner's rolls. Once the cart is full, they cover it with a heavy tarpaulin. They lead the horses away, heading towards the outskirts of the city, to the market gardens and farms, where this night soil will be sold as fertilizer. The city's waste will grow the city's vegetables, which will return to the city's tables, completing a grim cycle of consumption and excretion. You watch the cart disappear into the fog. The alleyway is quiet again, but the smell lingers. A faint brown stain trails down the cobblestones where the cart has passed. You turn away, grateful for the cold air, but knowing that beneath the ground you walk on, thousands of other pits are slowly filling up, waiting for the return of the night soil men. You leave the narrow confines of the alleyways and walk south, guided by the damp breeze. The buildings fall away and the space opens up. You have reached the embankment. Before you lies the great artery of the empire, the source of its wealth and the carrier of its plague, the River Thames. In the daylight of 1880, the Thames is not blue. It is not even green. It is a churning, opaque ribbon of brown and black. It looks less like water and more like a moving bruise on the face of the earth. Walk down the stone steps of the embankment, careful of the slick green algae that coats the masonry. The tide is out. This reveals the foreshore, a stretch of mud that glistens with an oily sheen. This mud is not soil. It is a sedimentary layer of coal dust, industrial runoff, and organic waste that has settled over centuries. The smell here is different from the sharp ammonia of the cesspool. It is broader, deeper. It is the smell of a million things decomposing simultaneously. It is a sour, fermented odor, mixed with the tarry scent of the gasworks and the chemical bite of the tanneries that line the banks. Look closely at the water itself. It is thick. It moves sluggishly, as if the weight of the particulate matter within it is dragging it down. Foam gathers at the edges, a yellowish-brown froth that bubbles and pops, releasing pockets of marsh gas. Floating in the current is the detritus of the city. You see a wooden crate, bobbing heavily, waterlogged and dark. You see the carcass of a dog, bloated and grey, drifting towards the sea. You see patches of oil, shimmering with iridescent rainbows that look beautiful until you realize they are toxic runoff from the factories upstream. In the summer of 1858, this smell became so powerful it was named the Great Stink. It was so offensive that Parliament had to soak their curtains in chloride of lime just to continue debating. By 1880, the new sewer system designed by Joseph Bazalgette is partially functional, diverting some of the filth, but the river remains a dangerous entity. Industrial factories sit right on the water's edge. Look across the river to the south bank. You see the silhouette of a chemical works. From a large iron pipe, a stream of vibrant, unnatural purple liquid pours directly into the river. It swirls into the brown water, a vein of poison. Further down, a slaughterhouse discards its offal. Entrails and blood wash into the tide, attracting swarms of seagulls that wheel and scream in the gloom. The sound of the river is a low, rhythmic lapping. Slap, suck, slap, suck. It eats at the pilings of the bridges, it erodes the stone. It hides everything. If you were to fall in, the danger is not just drowning, it is the water itself. To swallow a mouthful of Thames water is to invite dysentery, typhoid, and cholera. The water is a soup of microorganisms. Even the spray from a passing barge can carry infection. Yet there is life here. You see a small boat moving silently through the mist. It is a rowboat manned by a solitary figure. This is a tosher. He is not fishing for fish. There are no fish left in this part of the Thames. They all died decades ago, suffocated by the lack of oxygen. He is fishing for treasure. He wears a long coat with deep pockets and carries a lantern. He wades knee-deep into the toxic mud of the foreshore, poking the sludge with a hooked stick. He's looking for copper nails, bits of old iron, lost coins, or pieces of coal dropped from the barges. He is a scavenger of the sewer river. He is intimately acquainted with the filth. He knows the tides and he knows where the bodies wash up. He picks up a small metal object, wipes the slime off on his sleeve and pockets it. You watch him fade into the shadow of a bridge. The river flows on, indifferent. It carries the history of the city, the waste of the city, and the dead of the city, all moving slowly, relentlessly towards the cold expanse of the North Sea. You retreat from the suffocating yellow fog, stepping across the threshold of your lodgings and closing the heavy door behind you. You might think you have escaped the filth of the city, that you have entered a sanctuary of cleanliness and rest. But as you ascend the narrow, creaking staircase to the bedchamber, you are merely trading one form of pollution for another. The Victorian bedroom is not designed for airflow. It is designed for containment. In this era, medical wisdom is still heavily influenced by the theory of miasma, the belief that disease is carried on bad air, specifically the cold, damp night air we just walked through. To protect themselves, the inhabitants of London seal their sleeping quarters with the tightness of a tomb. Look at the window. It is shut tight, the sash painted over with layers of lead paint that have sealed the wood frame shut for decades. Heavy velvet curtains, dyed a deep, light-absorbing burgundy or forest green, are drawn completely across the glass. These drapes are lined with thick cotton or wool to block out the drafts, but in doing so they block out all ventilation. Run your hand down the fabric. It is not smooth. It is thick, coarse, and heavy with dust. If you were to strike the curtain with your hand, a cloud of grey particulate would explode into the room, a mixture of coal soot that has seeped in over the years, skin flakes from the occupants, and the disintegrated fibres of the carpet. The air in this room is still. It is warmer than the street, yes, but it is stale. It smells of old fabric, of lavender sachets that have long since lost their potency, of chamber pots that have been used and imperfectly cleaned, and of the unique, musty scent of damp plaster. Domineering the room is the bed itself. It is a massive piece of furniture, dark mahogany or iron, often surrounded by its own set of heavy curtains. The four-poster bed is a room within a room, a box of dead air intended to keep the sleeper warm. But let us look closer at what lies beneath the linens. You pull back the heavy quilt, which feels slightly damp to the touch. Everything in London feels slightly damp. Beneath it lies the mattress. If you are wealthy, this mattress is stuffed with goose feathers. If you are poor, it is stuffed with straw, horsehair, or flocking, shredded rags sold by the sack. Regardless of the filling, the mattress is an ecosystem. In 1880, you cannot simply buy a new mattress, you inherit it. This bed may have been slept in by your father, your grandfather, and perhaps a string of strangers if the room was let out. The feathers inside have broken down over decades into a fine organic dust. Every time you turn over in your sleep, this dust is puffed up through the ticking of the mattress, passing through the sheets and into your nose and mouth. You are breathing in the history of the previous sleepers, and you are not sleeping alone. Let us examine the seams of the mattress, where the fabric is tufted and buttoned. If you look closely, with the aid of a candle, you will see the signs, small, dark spots of ink, like excrement. The shed skins of growing nymphs, translucent and papery. And then, the movement, the Victorian bedbug, Cimex lectularius, is a constant companion in London. They are not a sign of poverty, they are a sign of humanity. They live in the mahogany headboards of the rich and the straw pallets of the poor. They wait for the carbon dioxide of your breath. When the candle is snuffed out and your breathing slows to the rhythm of sleep, they emerge from the cracks in the wood, from the folds of the velvet curtains, and from the deep interior of the mattress. They are flat, reddish-brown, and relentless. The smell of a room heavily infested with bedbugs is distinct. It is a sickly sweet, almost almond-like odor mixed with a metallic scent of dried blood. Even if you are lucky enough to avoid the bugs, there are the fleas. In a city where dogs, cats, and rats roam freely between the street and the house, fleas are ubiquitous. They live in the deep pile of the wool rugs that cover the floorboards. They live in the heavy tapestries. They wait for the vibration of a footstep to leap. You sit on the edge of the bed. The springs creak, a rusty, metallic groan. The sheets are cotton, boiled white by the washerwoman, but they have a greyish cast to them, a permanent stain from the London water. They feel cold and clammy. You lie down, and the weight of the blankets presses on you. You are encased in wool. As you stare up at the ceiling, you notice the plaster is stained with soot directly above the gas lamp. The combustion of the gas releases fumes into the unventilated room, slowly consuming the oxygen and replacing it with carbon monoxide and water vapor. The wallpaper, perhaps a lovely floral pattern, is peeling slightly at the corners, revealing the horsehair plaster beneath. The silence of the room is heavy. You can hear the scratching of something behind the skirting board, a mouse perhaps, or a rat navigating the hollow spaces between the walls, traveling from the cellar to the attic. The house is alive with these hidden movements. You close your eyes, trying to drift off. But the air is so thick, so rich with the dust of the velvet and the feathers, that your throat feels dry. You cough, a dry, hacking cough that echoes in the small room. This is the bedroom cough, a common ailment caused simply by the environment in which you sleep. You pull the covers up to your chin, resigned to the damp, the dust, and the microscopic companions that share your bed, waiting for the grey light of dawn to filter through the heavy curtains. Morning does not break in Victorian London, it oozes into existence. The light that manages to penetrate the heavy velvet curtains is weak and grey, filtered through the suspension of coal smoke outside. You wake not because of the sun, but because of the cold. The fire in the hearth died out hours ago. The temperature in the room has dropped to match the damp chill of the bricks. Your breath plumes before you in the semi-darkness, a small cloud of steam dissipating against the headboard. The first sensation of the day is the reluctance to move, to leave the relative warmth of the biological nest you have created, under the heavy wool blankets. But the city waits for no one. You must rise. You slide your legs out of bed, and your feet hit the floorboards. If there is a rug, it is gritty with coal dust that has settled overnight. If there is bare wood, it is icy. You move quickly to the washstand in the corner of the room. This is the centerpiece of Victorian hygiene. A wooden table holding a ceramic basin and a large pitcher of water. The water in the pitcher was brought up by a servant or a family member the night before. It has been sitting uncovered for 8 hours. Look at the surface of the water. In the dim light, you can see a thin, fragile film of grey dust floating on top. This is the London film, soot that has drifted down from the chimney, from the cracks in the ceiling, from the very air of the room, and settled on your cleansing water. You must break this film to wash. You pour the water into the basin. It is freezing cold. There is no hot water piping here, unless you have a kitchen maid who has been up since 4 a.m. boiling copper kettles. You wash with water that is the temperature of the stone cellar. You cup your hands and splash the icy liquid onto your face. It shocks the system, stinging the skin. You reach for the soap. The soap is a hard block of tallow rendered animal fat, mixed with lye. It smells faintly of mutton and ash. It does not lather well in the hard, cold water. Instead, it creates a slimy, greyish emulsion. You scrub your face trying to remove the grease of the night, but often you feel as though you are simply rearranging the soot. The towel is linen, stiff and scratchy. It has been dried indoors, as drying it outside would only turn it black with smog. It smells of dampness and the coal smoke of the laundry fire. You dry your face, leaving the towel streaked with grey. Now begins the dressing. This is not a matter of slipping on a light shirt. It is an act of engineering, a fortification against the hostile environment outside. First, the undergarments, both men and women, wear a base layer of wool or flannel. This layer is rarely washed. It is believed to absorb the humours of the body and keep the wet cold away from the skin. It is beige, shapeless, and itchy. You pull it on and it clings to you. Over time, this wool absorbs the sweat, the dead skin, and the oils of the body, creating a personal microclimate that you carry with you throughout the winter. For a woman, the layers continue. The corset, a rigid cage of whalebone and canvas, is laced tight. It restricts the lungs, making deep breathing impossible. In the smog-choked air of London, this shallowness of breath is perhaps a mercy, but it leaves you lightheaded. Then come the petticoats. 1, 2, perhaps 3 layers of heavy cotton or flannel. These skirts are floor length. They are destined to drag through the mud, the manure, and the spit of the pavement. The hems of a Victorian woman's skirts are arguably the filthiest objects in the city, collecting a sample of every street she crosses. For a man, the starch is the enemy. The collar of the shirt is separate, made of stiff cardboard, like linen, heavily starched and polished until it shines. It is attached with brass studs. The edges are sharp. As you fasten it around your neck, it digs into the soft flesh of your throat. If you turn your head too quickly, it chafes. This collar is white, a symbol of status, but maintaining that whiteness in London is a daily war. By midday, the rim of the collar will be grey. By evening, it will be black. You pull on your trousers, made of heavy wool tweed. The fabric is dense, designed to last for years. It is rarely cleaned, only brushed. If you were to beat the fabric with a stick, a cloud of dust would rise from the weave. Then the waistcoat, the jacket, the heavy overcoat. You are adding pounds of weight to your body. Finally, the boots. Leather, stiff and unyielding. You button them up with a metal hook. The soles are thick, studded with hobnails to grip the slippery cobblestones. You are armouring yourself. You are now dressed. You feel heavy, constricted, and slightly damp. The cold water on your face has woken you, but the chill of the room has already seeped through your layers. You glance in the mirror. The glass is silvered, but spotted with age. The reflection is dim. You see a pale face, shadowed eyes, and the grey light of the window reflected in the pupil. You are ready to descend the stairs. You are ready to face the house, the breakfast, and the city beyond. But you are already tired. The simple act of rising and preparing the body has consumed a fraction of your energy, and you have not yet even eaten the poison that awaits you on the breakfast table. You descend the staircase, the wood creaking under your heavy boots, guided by the smell of breakfast. In the modern imagination, the Victorian breakfast is a wholesome spread. Freshly baked bread, farm, fresh eggs, creamy milk, and strong, invigorating tea. It is the fuel of the empire. But in 1880s London, the dining table is not a place of nourishment. It is a chemistry set of unregulated deception. You enter the dining room. The fire has been lit, but the air still carries the damp chill of the night, now mixed with the smell of frying fat and brewing tea. You sit down at the table. The linen tablecloth stains slightly with the soot that falls from the air like snow. Let us examine the items before you, one by one, for in this era, nothing is what it seems. First, the bread. It sits on a ceramic platter, a round, high-topped loaf. It looks brilliantly, suspiciously white. In Victorian London, whiteness in bread is a status symbol. Dark bread is for the poor, white bread is for the refined. But wheat flour naturally has a golden yellowish hue. To achieve this spectral whiteness, the baker has not used better flour. He has used alum. Alum potassium aluminum sulfate is a chemical compound used in the dyeing of leather and the sizing of paper. In the bakery, it acts as a bleaching agent. It forces the flour to turn a stark, unnatural white. It also allows the baker to use damaged, partially sprouted, or damp flour that would otherwise be unsellable. The alum binds the gluten, allowing the dough to hold water, making the loaf heavy and large, giving you the illusion of value. You slice a piece. The texture is gummy. It does not crumble. It shears. When you eat it, the alum reacts with the acids in your stomach. It is an astringent. Over time, chronic consumption of alum leads to chronic gastritis, constipation, and the inability to absorb nutrients. You are eating laundry chemicals disguised as sustenance. But alum is the least of your worries. If the flour was too expensive, the baker may have cut it with other white powders, plaster of Paris, chalk, ground bone ash. In some cheaper districts, sawdust is added for bulk. There are records of loaves being analysed and found to contain up to 30% non-food gypsum. You butter a slice of this chalk bread. The butter is yellow, creamy, and salty. Or so it appears. But butter is expensive to transport from the countryside. What you are likely spreading on your alum bread is a mixture of animal fat lard, tallow, or horse grease, whipped together with a little bit of genuine butter, and then coloured. The colouring agent is often annatto, which is harmless, but sometimes it is lead chromate, which is a neurotoxin. To prevent this rancid fat from smelling, the dairyman may have washed it in a solution of acid. Now, you reach for the milk jug to pour into your tea. Victorian London milk is legendary, but for all the wrong reasons. It is known as sky blue because of its thin, watery, bluish tint. To maximise profit, the milkman dilutes the milk with water, often drawn from the same polluted pumps we will visit later. To counteract the thinness, he must thicken it again. He adds flour, starch, or chalk to recreate the cream that rises to the top. Some dairymen have been known to add pureed sheep's brains, but the milk must travel. There is no refrigeration. By the time it reaches your doorstep, it has been sitting in metal churns for 24 to 48 hours. It is teeming with bacteria, bovine tuberculosis, scarlet fever, typhoid to stop it from souring, or to mask the fact that it has already soured. The dairyman adds a preservative. The preservative of choice is boric acid. This is a chemical used today in insecticides and antiseptics. In your breakfast milk, it kills the bacteria, yes, but it also causes nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain in the consumer. In infants, the accumulation of boric acid from milk can be fatal. You pour this embalmed milk into your cup, and finally, the tea, the national drink. You take a sip. It tastes bitter, metallic, and strangely astringent. Tea leaves are imported from China or India, and they are taxed. They are valuable. Because of this, a vast black market exists for used tea. Scavengers collect used tea leaves from the back doors of hotels and coffee houses. These sodden, grey, flavourless leaves are taken to warehouses where they are revived. They are dried on hot copper plates. To make them look like green tea, they are dusted with Prussian blue, a pigment, and sheep's dung. To make them look like black tea, they are coated with graphite black lead, the very same substance used in pencils. When you drink your morning cup, you are drinking a suspension of lead and copper particles. The tannin has long since gone, replaced by chemical dyes. If you are wealthy enough to have bacon or ham, do not rejoice. The meat industry is entirely unregulated. The meat may be from a diseased animal, cows with rinderpest, or sheep with rot are routinely slaughtered and sold before they die naturally. To hide the smell of decay, the meat is washed in formaldehyde. To give it a fresh, red colour, it is treated with saltpeter and red lead. You finish your meal. You feel full, heavy. Your stomach gurgles, reacting to the chalk, the alum, the boric acid, and the lead. You have not nourished your body, you have burdened it. You wipe your mouth with a linen napkin, leaving a faint grey smear of graphite from the tea. You stand up ready to leave the dining room. But before you go, take a look at the walls surrounding you. They are painted a vibrant, stunning shade of emerald green. It is the most fashionable colour in London. It looks beautiful in the gaslight, but the walls too are hungry. You turn your back on the river, throat dry, and head inland. You are thirsty. It is a natural human instinct. In a modern city, you would find a fountain or buy a bottle. In Victorian London, you look for a pump. Standing on a street corner in Soho is an iron pump. It is painted a dark, respectable green. It has a long, curved handle, polished smooth by the hands of thousands of thirsty Londoners. A metal cup is attached to it by a chain, a communal vessel sharing the saliva of every passerby. The pump looks innocent, It looks like a beacon of civilization. The water that flows from it is cool and, to the naked eye, crystal clear. It sparkles in the gaslight. It looks far more appetizing than the brown sludge of the Thames or the tepid pipe. Born water supplied by the private water companies, which is often full of visible grit. This pump draws its water from a shallow well beneath the street. The water has filtered through the sand and gravel of the London basin. The earth is a natural filter. Usually it removes the visible dirt, but the earth cannot filter everything. Remember the cesspool we visited in Chapter 7, the brick-lined pit that leaks into the soil in a crowded city. The distance between the cesspool and the well is often measured in feet, not miles. The brickwork of the cesspool cracks. The brickwork of the well cracks. The fluid from the pit migrates through the soil, a slow, invisible seep of pathogens. It mingles with the groundwater. You step up to the pump. You grab the cold iron handle, you pump it. Creak splash, creak splash. The water gushes out, you fill the metal cup. You bring it to your lips. The water tastes good. In fact, many Londoners prefer the water from these shallow wells. It has a slight sparkle, a freshness. This effervescence is not a sign of purity. It is a sign of high nitrate content, a byproduct of decomposing organic matter. The water is essentially a very dilute, very cold sewage tea. And swimming in this clear, cool water is the Vibrio cholerae. It is invisible. It is tasteless. It is a microscopic comma-shaped bacterium with a single flagellum that propels it like a tail. When you swallow it, it passes into your stomach. If your stomach acid is weak, perhaps from eating too much alum-filled bread, the bacteria survive. They reach the small intestine. There, they bore into the lining of the gut and release a toxin. This toxin reverses the flow of fluids in your cells. Instead of absorbing water, your body begins to expel it violently. But you do not know this yet. You drink the water. It quenches your thirst. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. You have just engaged in the Broad Street roulette. In 1854, a single pump on Broad Street, contaminated by a single cesspool, killed over 600 people in less than 2 weeks. Whole families were wiped out. The death was rapid and undignified. A healthy man could wake up in the morning, drink a glass of water, and be dead by evening. His skin turned a shade of blue from extreme dehydration. You hang the metal cup back on its hook. The chain clinks against the iron body of the pump. A child steps up behind you, waiting for his turn. He is small, barefoot, his face smudged with soot. He reaches for the handle. You watch him. The pump stands there, a silent, mechanical dispenser of death, offering its cool poison to anyone who asks. You walk away, the taste of the nitrates lingering on your tongue, heading towards the sound of hissing steam and the smell of wet wool. You are moving from the cold water of the pump to the boiling vats of the washerwoman. You leave the cold, damp street and turn into a narrow courtyard. The air here changes instantly. It becomes thick, humid and warm. You are entering the domain of the washerwoman, a place of steam, soda and endless, repetitive labour. In the Victorian era, cleanliness is not a private ritual. It is an industrial process, even in the home. Monday is typically washing day, a day dreaded by every member of the household. But most of all by the women whose hands will be submerged in caustic water for 12 hours straight. Step inside the wash house. It is a small, stone-floored room attached to the scullery. The windows are steamed over, opaque with condensation that runs down the glass in rivulets. The centre of the room is dominated by the copper. This is a large brick-encased cauldron with a fire burning beneath it. It is filled with boiling water. The sound in the room is a constant low roar of the fire and the bubbling of the water. The smell is distinct. It is the scent of yellow soap, the same tallow-based block we met in the bedroom, but here used in industrial quantities. It mixes with the smell of soda crystals, sodium carbonate, which are added to soften the hard London water. And underlying it all is the smell of wet, dirty linen, the accumulated sweat, grime, and bodily fluids of a household, released by the heat into the steam. Watch the washerwoman. Her arms are red, swollen, and sodden. They are washerwoman's hands. The skin puckered and bleached white by the lye, the knuckles raw and cracked. She stands over a wooden tub, scrubbing. She uses a rubbing board, a corrugated wooden or glass board. Scrub, turn, scrub. Turn, the sound is a rhythmic rasping. She is scrubbing heavy woolen flannel, thick cotton sheets, and stiff linen collars. Wet wool is incredibly heavy. To lift a soaking wet Victorian petticoat out of a tub requires significant strength. It is a dead weight, dragging on the muscles of the back and shoulders. Unscrubbed, the clothes go into the copper. They are boiled. Ideally, this kills the lice and the fleas we encountered earlier, but the boiling creates a soup of dirt. To fish the clothes out, she uses a copper stick, a long wooden pole. She heaves the steaming mass of fabric out of the boiling water and into the rinsing tub. The rinsing water is cold. The shock of moving her hands from boiling hot to freezing cold water causes chilblains, painful, itchy swellings on the skin. But the linen is not white enough yet. To counteract the yellowing caused by the soap and the London water, she adds a blue bag. This is a small muslin bag filled with a synthetic blue dye, ultramarine or indigo. She swirls it in the water. The blue tint creates an optical illusion, making the yellowed fabric appear stark white. Then comes the wringing. There are no spin cycles. She must twist the water out of the heavy sheets by hand, or perhaps use a mangle, a mechanical wringer with 2 heavy wooden rollers. She feeds the wet fabric between the rollers and turns a heavy iron crank. Creak, squelch, creak. The water is pressed out, dripping onto the stone floor. The floor is permanently wet, a slick hazard of soapy slime. The air in the washhouse is depleted of oxygen by the fire and saturated with humidity. Washerwomen frequently suffer from washerwoman's bronchitis, a chronic respiratory condition caused by inhaling the alkaline steam and then stepping out into the cold smog. And consider what she is washing. In a time of epidemics, the linens of the sick are washed alongside the linens of the healthy. The water is rarely changed between loads. It is too precious and takes too long to heat. The bacteria from a cholera patient's bedsheets are boiled. Yes, but the handling of the dry, soiled linen before washing releases dust and germs into the air. The washerwoman is the first line of defense and the first victim. By evening, the washhouse is filled with drying racks. Lines are strung across the ceiling. The room becomes a maze of wet fabric. The humidity rises further. The washerwoman sinks onto a stool, her hands throbbing, her apron soaked through. She has purified the household, but she herself is coated in a film of lye and sweat. We leave the washhouse and return to the river, but this time we go lower. We go beneath the streets, into the dark, echoing tunnels that mirror the world above. We are entering the territory of the Toshers, the sewer hunters of London. In 1880, the sewers are a mix of ancient, crumbling brick tunnels and the new, grand intercepting sewers built by Basil Gett. They are vast, arched catacombs flowing with a dark, sluggish river of waste. To most, this is hell. To the Tosher, this is a gold mine. The Tosher enters the sewer at low tide, usually through an outlet on the riverbank. He wears a long canvas coat with capacious pockets, tied with rope. He carries a lantern fueled by oil, strapped to his chest to leave his hands free. In one hand, he holds a hoe, a long stick with a metal hook on the end. The atmosphere here is heavy. It is not just the smell, which is a concentrated version of the cesspool, ammonia, sulfur, and methane. It is the pressure. The air feels thick. The silence is broken only by the drip of condensation from the brick archways and the scurrying of rats. The rats here are fearless. They are large, sleek, and well-fed. They live in the ledges of the brickwork. A Tosher must be wary. If he is cornered or if he slips and falls, the rats can attack. Stories abound of Toshers being swarmed in the dark. He wades through the Tosh. The muck, he is looking for swag, coins that have washed down from the street gutters. Silver teaspoons accidentally thrown out with the dish water. Bits of copper piping, metal nails, bones, rags. He uses his hoe to probe the silt. Tap, scrape. He listens for the sound of metal against metal. When he finds something, he plucks it from the filth and drops it into his coat pocket. He is a filter, catching the solid wealth that the city excretes. But the sewer has other dangers besides rats. There are pockets of bad air. Carbon dioxide can accumulate in low spots, invisible and odorless. A Tosher can walk into a pocket and drop dead without a sound. Then there is the tide. The water level in the sewers rises and falls with the Thames. If a Tosher stays down too long, the tide turns. The exits are submerged. The water rises to the roof of the tunnel. There is no escape. He will drown in the sewage. Above ground, another scavenger works the river's edge, the mudlark. These are often children, young boys and girls with bare feet and ragged clothes. They do not go into the tunnels. They work the foreshore mud at low tide. They wade knee deep in the freezing slime. Their eyes are sharp. They are looking for lumps of coal dropped from the barges. A sack of coal can be sold for a penny, enough to buy a loaf of alum bread. They look for white money, silver, but usually find only old iron or rope. The mud sucks at their legs. Broken glass and rusty metal lie hidden beneath the surface. Cuts are common. Infection is inevitable. Their skin is encrusted with the river's biofilm. They are small, grey figures moving against the grey mud, indistinguishable from the landscape they scour. They are the recyclers of the Victorian age. Nothing in London is truly wasted. It is used, discarded, found, cleaned, and sold again. The coin you pay the baker with may have been in a sewer yesterday. The coal in your grate may have been pulled from the river mud this morning. We move now from the river to the factory floor. We travel east, towards the docks and the industrial zones where the hum of the city originates. The air here changes texture again. It is no longer just wet and foggy, it is dry, dusty, and vibrating with noise. We enter a textile mill. The noise is a physical wall. Clack, 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 clack. Hundreds of power looms are running simultaneously, driven by steam engines and leather belts that slap and whir overhead. The floor shakes. Conversation is impossible. Workers communicate in sign language or by shouting directly into an ear. But it is the air that concerns us. Look at the shafts of sunlight coming through the high, grime-streaked windows. The air is filled with fly, millions of microscopic fibers of cotton, wool, or flax. It looks like a snowstorm indoors. This dust is everywhere. It settles on the hair of the workers, turning them prematurely white. It settles on their eyebrows, their clothes, and in their tea. And, with every breath, it settles in their lungs. This is the origin of byssinosis, or brown lung. The fibers irritate the lung tissue. The body reacts by producing mucus to trap the particles. The worker coughs. It is a tight, wheezing cough. On Monday mornings, the coughing is worse as the lungs, having rested for a day, reject the reintroduction of the dust. This is known as Monday fever. In the flax mills, the conditions are wet. Flax must be spun damp. The room is filled with hot steam to keep the fibers pliable. The workers, mostly women, stand barefoot on wet stone floors, drenched in sweat and condensation, breathing in hot, humid air filled with vegetable particulate. In the metal grinding workshops, the dust is different. It is not soft fiber, it is sharp silica and steel. The grinders sit over spinning sandstone wheels, sharpening knives, scissors, and tools. Sparks fly, but so does invisible stone dust. A dry grinder, one who works without water on the wheel, has a life expectancy of perhaps 30 years. His lungs turn to stone. It is called grinder's asthma, or silicosis. He breathes in glass shards. If you were to examine his lungs after death, they would be hard, gritty, and solid. There is no ventilation. Windows are kept closed to maintain humidity for the thread, or to prevent drafts from cooling the metal too quickly. The air is recycled, breathed in and out by hundreds of people, becoming richer in carbon dioxide and dust with every hour. The workers spit, they spit onto the floor. In a coal-fired factory, the spit is black spit, a mix of mucus and coal dust. In a textile mill, it is white and frothy, and amidst this dust, the machinery offers its own threat. The unguarded leather belts, moving at high speed, build up static electricity. The air smells of ozone and hot oil. The oil is used to lubricate the machines. It is mineral oil, often carcinogenic. It sprays into the air as a fine mist. The workers breathe an aerosol of oil and dust. Mule spinners' cancer of the scrotum, is common among men who lean over the oil. Soaked bars of the spinning mules day after day. You stand in the aisle, watching the shuttles fly back and forth. Your chest feels tight. You can taste the cotton on your tongue. It is a dry, fibrous taste. You realize that the very clothes on your back, the sheets on your bed, were produced at the cost of the lungs of these silent, moving figures, disappearing into the haze of their own production. You leave the deafening roar of the factory and step back into the street. It is Saturday night, the traditional shopping time for the working classes of London. Under the flaring, hissing light of gas jets, the street market is in full swing. We are heading towards the centre of the noise, the butcher's stall. In 1880, refrigeration is a luxury of the transatlantic steamships, not the corner shop. The meat you see before you is preserved by the ambient temperature of the London air, which is to say, it is not preserved at all. Stand before the stall. It is an open-fronted shop, essentially a cave of flesh carved out of the city street. Carcasses of beef, mutton, and pork hang on iron hooks, suspended directly over the pavement. There is no glass window. There is no screen. The meat is exposed to the elements. Observe the surface of a leg of mutton hanging nearest the street. It is coated in a fine, glistening layer of moisture. This is not just natural juice. It is a mixture of condensation from the fog and the settling soot we have discussed at length. If you were to run a finger down the flank of the animal, your fingertip would come away black. To make the meat look appealing in the harsh, flickering gaslight, the butcher employs a few tricks. The gas jets are often unshielded, burning with a naked flame that consumes oxygen and heats the air around the meat, accelerating decomposition. But the light they cast is a warm, flattering yellow that masks the greying colour of aging beef. Watch the butcher. He is a large man in a striped apron that is stiff with dried blood and grease. He holds a cloth in his hand. Every few minutes he steps out and wipes the meat. He is removing the slime, the bacterial film that blooms on the surface of dead tissue. He polishes the fat until it shines. If a piece of meat has gone truly off, smelling of rot, it is not discarded. It is saved. It might be washed in vinegar to kill the smell. It might be rubbed with saltpeter to turn the grey flesh a vibrant, healthy pink. Or, if it is too far gone for a roast, it is minced. Sausages are the graveyard of the butcher's stall. Into the grinder go the trimmings, the gristle, the organs, and the meat that has turned green. Heavily spiced with pepper and sage to hide the taste of decay, these sausages are sold cheap to the poor. The saveloy, a pre-cooked, highly seasoned sausage, is a favourite street food, eaten hot by people who try not to think about its origins. And then there are the flies. Even in the cool damp of a London autumn, the heat of the gas lamps and the smell of blood attract them. Blue bottles buzz lazily around the hanging carcasses. They land on the open cuts, they lay their eggs in the crevices of the fat. The butcher waves a hand to scatter them, but they return instantly. Beneath the hanging meat, on the wooden counter, lie the organs, liver, kidneys, hearts. They sit in pools of their own leakage. A cat weaves between the butcher's legs, waiting for a scrap to fall into the sawdust on the floor. The sawdust itself is red and clumpy, changed perhaps once a week, holding the dripping blood of 1,000 cuts. You watch a customer approach, a woman in a shawl. She pokes the meat. She smells it. She is negotiating with the butcher, not for the prime cut, but for the pieces, the scraps of fat and gristle that she will boil into a broth. She pays her penny. The butcher wraps the wet, questionable meat in a piece of newspaper, ink transferring to the fat, and hands it over. You walk away, the metallic smell of blood and the sulphur of the gas lamps lingering in your nose. You have seen how the city feeds its body. Now, let us see how it paints its face. We leave the grime of the market and enter the hushed, perfumed sanctuary of a lady's boudoir in Kensington. The curtains are drawn against the day. The room is lit by candles, casting a soft, forgiving light. Seated at a vanity table cluttered with crystal bottles and silver jars is a Victorian beauty. She's preparing her toilette. In this era, beauty is pain, but more accurately, beauty is toxicity. The ideal Victorian complexion is pale, not just fair, but translucent, almost consumptive. A tubercular look is fashionable. Pale skin, dilated eyes, fever, red lips. To achieve this look without actually contracting tuberculosis requires chemistry. She reaches for a small, decorative pot. It contains enamel. This is a heavy white foundation cream. She applies it to her face, neck, and shoulders. It covers the natural skin tone completely, creating a smooth, marble-like mask. The primary ingredient of this enamel is white lead carbonate, the same substance used in house paint. When applied to the skin, it blocks the pores completely, but lead is not inert. It is absorbed through the skin into the bloodstream. As she uses this product day after day, year after year, the lead accumulates in her body. The symptoms of lead poisoning, plumbism, begin to manifest. Her wrist might become weak wrist drop. A blue line might appear on her gums, the Burton line. Her teeth may rot and turn grey. Ironically, the lead cream damages the skin it is meant to beautify. It causes the skin to dry, crack, and turn a sallow, greyish yellow. To hide this damage, she must apply more of the thick white lead enamel. It is a vicious cycle. She is painting over a dying canvas. Now, the eyes. She wants them to sparkle. She wants the pupils to be large and dark, simulating the look of arousal or fever. She picks up a small dropper bottle containing a clear liquid. She tilts her head back and drops the liquid into her eyes. This is belladonna, beautiful lady. It is an extract of the deadly nightshade plant, Atropa belladonna. The active ingredient is atropine. It paralyzes the muscles of the iris, forcing the pupil to stay wide open. It gives her the desired, doe-eyed look, but atropine affects the lens of the eye as well. It blurs her vision. She cannot read. She cannot see clearly across the room. She stumbles slightly. Prolonged use can lead to permanent blindness and glaucoma. She is literally blinding herself for beauty. The lips and cheeks, she avoids the rouge of the painted woman, the prostitute. She wants a subtle flush. She might use a paper impregnated with carmine, crushed beetles, or, more dangerously, a compound of mercury sulfide. Vermilion, mercury-like lead, is absorbed through the skin. It attacks the nervous system. It causes tremors, the hatter's shakes, and mood swings. But perhaps the most terrifying item on her vanity is a small box of complexion wafers. These are sold openly in the chemists. They promise to remove freckles, pimples, and redness. The lady takes one and places it on her tongue. It tastes slightly metallic. She is an arsenic eater. Small doses of arsenic are believed to clear the complexion and give the eyes a brilliance. And it works. Arsenic destroys red blood cells, leading to anemia, which creates the coveted pallor. It causes a slight edema, fluid retention in the face, which fills out wrinkles and makes the skin look plump and youthful. She's poisoning herself to look alive. As the arsenic builds up in her system, she risks keratosis, horny growths on the hands and feet, hair loss, and eventually organ failure. But for now, in the mirror, she looks perfect. A porcelain doll painted with lead, blinded by nightshade, and preserved with arsenic. She stands up, adjusting her arsenic green dress, and prepares to go out. But what happens when this toxic regimen, or the city itself, makes her ill? She goes to the chemist. You enter the chemist's shop, the apothecary. It is a dark, narrow shop lined from floor to ceiling with mahogany shelves. On these shelves sit hundreds of glass bottles, cobalt blue, amber, and emerald green. The air smells of dried herbs, camphor, and alcohol. In 1880, there is no FDA. There are few regulations on what can be sold as medicine. You can walk into this shop and buy over the counter substances that today would be classified as Class A narcotics or deadly poisons. You approach the counter. You have a cough. The chemist nods. He reaches for a bottle of chlorodyne. This is a miracle cure. It is marketed for coughs, colds, cholera, and insomnia. Let us look at the label. It contains a mixture of chloroform, a solvent, morphine, a narcotic, and cannabis indica. It effectively knocks you unconscious. You do not cough because you are in a coma. It is highly addictive. Perhaps you have a crying baby. The Victorian mother's secret weapon is Godfrey's cordial, also known affectionately as mother's friend. It is a sweet syrup flavored with sassafras. Its main ingredient is laudanum. Laudanum is a tincture of opium, 10% opium powder dissolved in ethyl alcohol. You feed this to an infant. The baby stops crying. The baby goes to sleep. If you give too much, the baby never wakes up. Opium starvation is a common cause of infant death. The child is so sedated it loses the will to eat, slowly wasting away while in a drugged haze. For a liver complaint, or perhaps for a child who is teething, the chemist recommends calomel. This is a white powder. It is tasteless. It is mercurous chloride, mercury. When given to teething babies in the form of teething powders, it causes a condition known as pink disease, acrodynia. The child's hands and feet turn pink and peel. Their teeth fall out. Their gums rot. They become incredibly irritable and photophobic. The parents, seeing the child is still sick, give more of the powder, thinking it is the cure. For a pick-me-up, a tonic for the nerves, you might be prescribed something containing strychnine. In very small doses, it is a stimulant. It sharpens the senses. In slightly larger doses, it causes violent convulsions and death by asphyxiation as the respiratory muscles lock tight. And look at the bottles themselves to distinguish poisons from medicines. The law is slowly introducing ribbed bottles or coloured glass. But mistakes happen. In the dim light of a gas-lit bedroom, tired parents often confuse the bottle of carbolic acid, a cleaning agent, with the bottle of cough syrup. The shelves are a lottery. Arsenic is sold as a rat poison, but also as a tonic. Cocaine is sold in toothache drops for children. Heroin is marketed as a non-addictive substitute for morphine and a cough suppressant. The Victorian body is a chemical dumping ground. You wash with lye, you eat alum and borax. You paint your face with lead, and when you feel sick, you treat yourself with mercury and opium. You buy a small bottle of laudanum for your nerves. The chemist wraps it in brown paper. You pay him. As you walk out, you pass a shelf of carbolic smoke balls, promising to cure influenza. The shop bell rings behind you. You step back out into the fog, clutching your poison, ready to seek medical attention if the chemist's wares fail you. But the surgeon's knife offers its own unique brand of horror. You climb the narrow spiral staircase of the hospital, ascending towards the attic. The air grows warmer as you rise, and a new distinct smell begins to overpower the general scent of the hospital's carbolic acid. It is the smell of old blood, wet sawdust, and unwashed bodies. You push open the heavy wooden doors and step into the surgical theatre. The room is semicircular, rising in steep tiers like a Roman amphitheatre. The gallery is packed. Hundreds of medical students, clad in their street clothes, lean over the wooden railings. They are noisy, jostling for a better view. They have brought the dirt of the London streets in with them, on their boots and coats. The air is thick with their breath, the smoke from their pipes, though smoking is technically forbidden, and the dust they kick up. In the centre of the pit, illuminated by a large skylight that is grimed with soot, stands the operating table. It is not stainless steel, it is wood. A heavy deal table stained dark by decades of use. It has absorbed the fluids of thousands of patients. Beneath it, on the floorboards, lies a thick layer of sawdust. This is not for comfort, it is to catch the blood. Enter the surgeon. He does not scrub his hands, he does not wear a mask. He does not wear sterile gloves. In fact, he does not even remove his street clothes. He simply puts on his operating coat. This coat is a frock coat, once black, now stiff and encrusted with dried blood and pus. It is never washed. The stiffness is a badge of honour. The more encrusted the coat, the more experienced the surgeon. It smells of the slaughterhouse. In the buttonhole, he might carry a loop of whipcord for tying off arteries. The patient is brought in. They are pale, terrified, often emaciated. In 1880, anaesthesia exists, chloroform or ether, but it is administered crudely. A rag soaked in the chemical is placed over the patient's face. The room fills with the sickly sweet, cloying scent of chloroform, mixing with the metallic tang of the blood-stiffened coat. The surgeon approaches the table. He rolls up his sleeves, revealing cuffs that are grey with grime. He reaches for his instruments. They are laid out on a velvet-lined wooden tray. They have ebony or ivory handles intricately carved. These grooves harbour bacteria. The blades are steel, but they are not sterile. Before the first cut, the surgeon might wipe the scalpel on his boot sole to sharpen it, or perhaps test the edge on his thumbnail. The operation begins. Speed is everything. Even with anaesthesia, the shock to the system is profound. The surgeon works with a terrifying, frantic energy. He cuts. Blood sprays onto the sawdust. The students in the gallery lean closer, inhaling the rising vapours of the open wound. If the surgeon drops an instrument, he picks it up from the floor, wipes it on his coat, and continues. If he needs to thread a needle for sutures, he might moisten the thread with his own saliva. There is no concept of sepsis here in the way we know it. Pus is expected. In fact, thick, creamy pus is called laudable pus, considered a sign of healing. It is, of course, a sign of massive staph infection. The amputation is over in minutes. The limb is tossed into a basket of sawdust beneath the table. The wound is bandaged with charpie, shredded linen made from old rags collected by the poor, often unwashed and teeming with bacteria. The patient is wheeled out, destined for a ward where hospital gangrene is rampant. This is a condition where the wound turns black and green, the flesh dying and liquefying. The smell of a gangrene ward is unforgettable. A sweet, rotting stench that clings to the hair and clothes of anyone who visits. You watch the surgeon wipe his hands on a rag that has been used by 10 other men that morning. He turns to the students, gesturing with a bloody hand, lecturing on the technique. The dust motes dancing in the skylight are mixed with dried particulate matter from the coat. This is the theatre of death, where the cure is often more dangerous than the disease. You leave the hospital and head east. You cross into the sensory overload of Whitechapel or Spitalfields. We are going to visit the homes of the people you just saw on the operating table. We are entering a rookery, a slum tenement. The building leans ominously. It was once a fine merchant's house, perhaps in the 1700s, but now it has been subdivided and subdivided again. The front door hangs off its hinges. The hallway is pitch black. The staircase is missing steps. You must navigate by feeling the damp, peeling wall. You reach a room on the second floor. You open the door. The first thing that hits you is the heat. It is a humid, biological heat. The room is perhaps 10 feet by 12 feet. Living inside this single chamber are 12 people. A family, perhaps 2 families, sharing the rent. The air is unbreathable. The window is nailed shut to keep out the cold and the miasma. But in doing so, it traps the moisture of 12 pairs of lungs, the steam from a cooking pot, and the smell of the unwashed bodies. The walls run with water. The wallpaper hangs in damp strips, revealing the lath and plaster beneath, which is crumbling. Look at the sleeping arrangements. There is no bed. There is a pile of rags in the corner, the heap. It is a mound of old coats, straw, and sacking. This is where the children sleep, huddled together like a litter of puppies for warmth. The adults might sleep on a flock mattress on the floor, or simply on the bare boards. If the room is a penny hang, there is no floor space. A rope is strung across the room like a clothesline. The lodgers pay a penny to lean over the rope, their arms hanging down, and sleep standing up. In the morning, the landlord cuts the rope, and everyone wakes up by falling onto the floor. The floor itself is encrusted. It has not been scrubbed in years. A chalk line might be drawn across the center of the room. This is the legal boundary between two families. On one side, a family eats their meager supper of bread and drippings. On the other side, a woman might be giving birth, or a man might be dying of consumption, tuberculosis. Life and death occur within inches of each other, separated only by a line of white dust. The smell is a complex chord of poverty. It is the smell of boiled cabbage, the staple diet. It is the smell of drying wool. Clothes washed in the room are strung up to dry, adding to the humidity. It is the smell of the slop pail in the corner, which serves as the toilet for 12 people and is emptied only once a day, and it is the smell of vermin. The room is alive. The walls seem to shimmer in the dim light of a tallow candle. Look closer. It is the movement of lice. Body lice live in the seams of the clothes. Head lice live in the hair. At night, the bugs descend from the ceiling. The children are bitten so frequently that their skin becomes hardened and scarred, a condition known as vagabond's disease. There is no privacy. None. Arguments, intimacy, sickness, prayer, everything happens in the public gaze of the room's inhabitants. The noise is constant. Through the thin walls you hear the coughing of the neighbour, the crying of a baby, shouting of a drunkard. You stand near the door, afraid to touch the walls. You realise that for these people, the home is not a sanctuary. It is merely a container for bodies, a place to wait out the dark hours before returning to the struggle of the street. If you cannot pay the rent for the tenement room, you have one option left, the workhouse. You enter the grim brick fortress, often referred to as the Spike. You are destitute. You have surrendered your freedom for a bowl of gruel and a roof. But first you must be processed. You must be cleaned. You are led to the receiving ward. The air here smells of something sharp and burning carbolic acid. This is the smell of the institution. The walls are whitewashed brick, stark and blinding. You are ordered to strip your clothes, your rags are taken away to be fumigated in a sulphur oven. You stand naked on the cold stone floor, shivering, surrounded by strangers. The humiliation is the first step of the discipline. You are inspected. The master of the workhouse or a matron checks your hair for lice. If found, your head is shaved. It is done quickly, roughly, with shears that pull the hair. You are left bald and vulnerable. Then, the bath. In a large room, there is a long rectangular tub. It is filled with hot water, but water costs money to heat. In many workhouses, the water is not changed between paupers. You watch as the first man gets in. The water is clear. He scrubs himself with the rough yellow soap. He gets out. The second man gets in. The water is grey. By the time the 20th man gets in, the water is a thick, brown sludge. It looks, as one observer described, like mutton broth. It has a scum of grease and dead skin floating on the surface. You are number 30. You must step into this water. It is lukewarm now. You submerge yourself in the filth of 29 other men. You are not getting clean, you are marinating in a communal soup of bacteria and grime. But you must scrub, the attendant watches. If you do not scrub hard enough, you are scrubbed with a stiff brush that feels like wire wool. You climb out, your skin coated in a film of other people's dirt. You are handed a towel. It is not soft terry cloth. It is huckaback, or sometimes even coarse linen that feels like sandpaper. You dry yourself, your skin red and raw. Then, the uniform. You are given the workhouse dress. It is made of coarse, scratchy wool or corduroy. It does not fit. It is too big or too small. It smells of the fumigation oven, a burnt chemical smell. It stamps you. You are no longer an individual. You are a pauper. You are marched to your dormitory. The beds are narrow iron cots, spaced inches apart. The mattress is straw. The blanket is rough. imprinted with the name of the parish to prevent theft. You lie down. The smell of the carbolic acid is trapped in your nose. The memory of the brown bath water clings to your skin. You are clean in the eyes of the regulations, but you have never felt filthier. You close your eyes, listening to the coughing of the man in the next cot, and wait for the bell that will wake you at 5 a.m. to break stones or pick oakum until your fingers bleed. Night has fully fallen over London, but the city is never truly asleep. While the human inhabitants retreat to their damp beds, a vast, bustling population wakes up. We are now entering the microscopic and macroscopic kingdom of the vermin. In the Victorian imagination, cleanliness is next to godliness, but the reality is an unending war against infestation. You are never alone in Bar. You are a host. Let us begin with the smallest invader, the louse. The body louse, Pediculus humanus, is not merely a nuisance. It is a permanent garment. It lives in the seams of the heavy woolen clothes that are rarely washed. It thrives on body heat. When you sit in a crowded omnibus or huddle for warmth in a tenement, the lice migrate. They move from coat to coat, unseen but felt. The itch is constant. It is a dull, crawling sensation that becomes a sharp bite. The louse feeds on blood. As it feeds, it excretes waste onto your skin. When you scratch the bite, you rub this waste into the wound. This is how typhus is transmitted. Gow fever, they call it, but it is really louse fever. A fever that starts with a headache and ends with delirium and a spotted rash. Then the flea. The Victorian flea is an athlete. It lives in the dust of the floorboards, in the deep pile of the carpets, and on the backs of the cats and dogs that roam the house. It can jump Yodinine times its own height. You feel it as a sudden, sharp prick on your ankle. By the time you look down, it is gone. In the summer, flea season is a recognized phenomenon. People scatter herbs, wormwood, mint, pennyroyal, on the floor to deter them. They hang flea traps around their necks, small tubes containing a piece of blood and soaked cloth and sticky resin, hoping the fleas will jump into the trap instead of biting the skin. It is a futile defense. Now, look at the walls. In the cracks of the plaster behind the skirting boards, and deep inside the wooden bed frame, lives the bedbug. We met them briefly in the bedroom, but let us look closer. They are flat, reddish gen brown, and smell of coriander and rot. They can survive for a year without feeding. They wait. When you sleep, they emerge. They are attracted to the carbon dioxide you exhale. They crawl across the ceiling and drop onto the bed. They pierce your skin with a beak gen like proboscis. They inject an anesthetic so you do not wake up. You only discover the invasion in the morning, lines of red, swollen welts on your arms and neck. The breakfast, lunch, and dinner pattern of bites. If you crush a bedbug, it leaves a rusty smear of your own blood on the sheets. In a heavily infested room, the walls are speckled with these black dots, the fecal spots of thousands of bugs. But the true masters of the city are the rats. The brown rat, Rattus norvegicus, has conquered London. It is larger, more aggressive, and more adaptable than the old black rat. It lives in the sewers, in the cellars, in the walls, and under the floorboards. Listen to the house at night. Scratch, scuttle, gnaw. Rats need to gnaw constantly to keep their teeth from growing into their brains. They chew through wood. They chew through lead pipes. They chew through brick. They can collapse a floorboard. They are intelligent. They know the routes through the house better than you do. They come up from the drains. A rat can swim up the U-end bend of a toilet or a privy pipe and emerge into the house. They are wet with sewage. Their fur carries the bacteria of the underworld, Weil's disease, leptospirosis, salmonella, worms. They raid the larder. They urinate on the flour. They leave droppings in the sugar. You eat the contamination, and they are bold. In the slums, there are stories of rats attacking infants in their cribs, attracted by the smell of milk on the child's breath. Mothers must keep a stick by the bed to beat them off. In the workhouses, the elderly sometimes wake to find rats nibbling at their toes. To fight them, the Victorians employ the rat catcher. He is a specialized professional. He arrives with a cage of ferrets and a terrier dog. He smears his hands with oils, aniseed or rhodium, claiming it attracts the rats. He goes into the cellar. The ferrets flush the rats out. The dog snaps their necks. It is a blood sport. The rat catcher is paid by the tail. But for every rat he kills, 10 more are born in the darkness beneath the street. There are also the cockroaches, black beetles. They swarm in the kitchens at night, covering the floor in a moving shiny carpet. They love the heat of the hearth. When you walk into the kitchen with a candle, the floor seems to ripple as they scatter. They eat the wallpaper paste. They eat the leather of your boots. You are outnumbered. The biological load of the house is immense. You share your heat, your food, and your blood with a thriving, invisible ecosystem. You are not the master of the house. You are merely the largest organism in the colony. The candle is burning low. The wax pools in the brass holder, dripping down the side like tears. The shadows in the corners of the room grow longer, stretching across the soot-gen ceiling. It is time to sleep, but sleep in Victorian London is not a passive act. It is a retreat into a fortress against the miasma. The fear of the night air is primal. Despite the scientific advances of the late Shizhou 8th century, the old belief persists. The air at night is toxic. It carries the vapors of the marshes, the exhalations of the earth, the silent drift of disease. So, you prepare the room, you check the window. It is latched tight. You draw the heavy, velvet curtains, ensuring there is no gap where the yellow fog might seep in. You place a sausage, a long, stuffed fabric tube, at the bottom of the door to block the draft from the hallway. You are sealing yourself in. You extinguish the gas lamp. The hissing stops, but the smell of unburnt gas lingers for a moment before fading into the background scent of dust and lavender. The room is plunged into darkness. It is a heavy, absolute darkness. The smog outside blocks the moon and stars. The street lamps are too dim to penetrate the curtains. You are blind. You climb into the high bed. The mattress creaks. You pull the heavy wool blankets up to your chin. You are wearing a nightshirt and a nightcap. The nightcap is essential. It keeps the head warm, yes, but it also protects the ears from the drafts that cause earaches and madness. You lie still. Listen to the city. It is quieter now, but not silent. The roar of the traffic has dulled to a distant rumble like the ocean. But the closer sounds are magnified. The scuttle of the rat in the wall, the dripping of water from a leaky gutter, the wheezing cough of a family member in the next room. The air in the room begins to change. With every breath you take, you consume oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. The room is small. The ventilation is blocked. Slowly, steadily, the CO levels rise. The air becomes stuffy. It feels thick. This rising carbon dioxide acts as a mild sedative. It makes your limbs feel heavy. It dulls your mind. You are essentially narcotizing yourself with your own breath. As you drift towards sleep, your mind replays the sensory assaults of the day. The taste of the Alum bread, the smell of the cesspool, the squelch of the mud, the sight of the green arsenic wallpaper glowing in the gaslight. You feel a slight itch on your ankle, a flea, a bedbug. You are too tired to scratch. You let it be. The cold dampness of the room settles on your face. The only exposed part of your body is your nose and mouth. You are breathing in the dust of the feathers, the mold spores from the wallpaper, the dried particulate of the street. But you are safe. You are inside. The fog is outside. The river is outside. The night soil men are doing their work in the dark alleys, but you are here, in your velvet gen-lined box. Your breathing slows. The darkness presses against your eyelids. The weight of the Victorian world, the heavy clothes, the heavy food, the heavy air finally pulls you down. You are asleep. And outside, the yellow fog swirls against the glass, waiting for the morning, when the cycle of grime, poison, and survival will begin all over again. Sleep well. We have seen the mud of the streets and the sludge of the river, but there is another landscape in Victorian London, one that rivals the pyramids in scale, yet is made entirely of refuse. We travel now to King's Cross, to the great dust heaps. In Itembabebasha, waste management is a lucrative private enterprise. Every fireplace in London produces ash. Every household produces broken crockery, oyster shells, rags, and bones. This refuse is collected by the dustmen and carted here to these vast man-made mountains of grey debris. Imagine standing at the base of a dust heap. It towers 30 feet above you. It is unstable, shifting constantly as new cartloads are tipped onto the summit. The air here is dry and acrid. It tastes of cinder and decay. It is a monochrome world. Everything, the ground, the sky, the workers, is covered in a thick layer of grey powder. The workers here are mostly women and old men. They are the sifters. Watch a sifter at work. She stands waist-gen deep in the dust. She wears a heavy leather apron and a hat tied down with a scarf to keep the ash out of her ears. Though her face is coated in a mask of grime so thick it cracks when she speaks, she holds a large sieve known as a riddle. The work is a ceaseless repetitive motion: scoop, shake, toss. She is separating the valuable from the worthless. Nothing is thrown away. The soil, fine ash. falls through the sieve. This will be sold to farmers as fertilizer, or to brickmakers to mix with clay. The breeze small cinders is caught. This is sold back to brickmakers to burn in their kilns. The hardcore, broken crockery, oyster shells is set aside. This will be used to pave the foundations of new roads. The softcore, rags, paper, vegetable matter, is piled separately. Rags go to paper mills. Bones go to glue factories. The sound of the dust yard is a dry rasping. It is the sound of millions of pieces of grit rubbing together. The dust hangs in the air like a static fog. When the wind blows, a grey blizzard envelopes the yard. The sifters cough, spitting out grey phlegm. Their lungs are essentially cemented with silica and coal dust. But there is a strange stillness here. It is a graveyard of objects. You see the broken handle of a teacup, the spine of a book, the sole of a shoe, fragments of lives lived in the city, now reduced to their component atoms, waiting to be recycled back into the very bricks that build the houses. From the dry dust of King's Cross, we travel south across the river to Bermondsey, the district of leather. As you approach, the smell hits you long before you see the buildings. It is a smell so violent, so complex in its foulness, that it makes the cesspools seem mild. It is the smell of the tanning. You enter a tannery yard. The ground is slick with biological runoff. Rows of deep timber-lined pits are sunk into the earth. These are the vats where animal hides are transformed into leather for the boots and belts of the empire. The process is chemically brutal. First, the hides must be cleaned of hair and flesh. They are soaked in a mixture of lime and water. This rots the organic matter. Men lean over the pits, using long wooden poles to heave the heavy, slippery skins from the caustic liquid. The lime burns their hands. Their skin is bleached white and deeply cracked. But to soften the leather, a specific enzyme is needed. In 1880, this enzyme is not synthesized in a lab. It is harvested from nature. The hides are submerged in a solution known as pure. Pure is a polite name for dog feces. An entire microeconomy exists to supply this. Pure finders, often old women or children, roam the streets of London with buckets, collecting the white, chalky droppings of the stray dogs. They sell it by the bucket load to the tanneries. The tanners mix this excrement with warm water in the pits. You watch a tanner at work. He is standing barefoot on the edge of a pure pit. He reaches in with his bare hands to check the suppleness of a hide soaking in the brown, murky liquid. He is essentially marinating the skin in filth to make it soft. After the pure, the hides go into the tanning liquor, oak bark and water. This is a slow process. The hides soak for months. The yard is quiet, save for the splashing of liquid and the creak of the drying racks. The air is thick with the scent of wet dog, ammonia, lime and tannins. It creates a taste in the back of the throat that cannot be washed away. The tanners themselves carry the smell in their pores. They are pariahs in public houses marked by the scent of their trade. You watch the steam rise from a lime pit, dissolving the last remnants of the animal, turning death into a commodity. We move now to the East End, to a factory that produces the tiny wooden sticks that light the fires of London, the match factory. You enter a long, dimly lit shed. The air here does not smell of rot, it smells of garlic and brimstone. It is a sharp chemical smell that stings the eyes immediately. Inside, hundreds of women and teenage girls sit at long benches. They are the match girls. Their job is to dip the tips of the wooden splinters into a heated paste to create the match head. The paste is a mixture of gum, red lead, and white phosphorus. White phosphorus is highly toxic. In the dark, it glows with a faint, greenish, yellow luminescence. It is beautiful, but it is deadly. Watch the dipping process. The girl holds a frame containing thousands of splinters. She dips them into the shallow tray of hot, fuming phosphorus paste. Vapors rise directly into her face. She breathes them in 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. She eats her lunch at the bench, her hands covered in the phosphorus dust. The bread she eats glows faintly in the shadows. She's ingesting the poison. This leads to the most feared industrial disease of the century, phossy jaw, phosphorus necrosis. The fumes attack the bone of the jaw. It begins with a toothache, then the gums swell, then the abscesses form. Slowly the jawbone begins to die. It rots inside the mouth. The smell of the decaying bone is so offensive that victims are often banned from their own homes. Eventually, the jawbone effectively dissolves or must be surgically removed. You look at the faces of the women working. Some have scarves wrapped tightly around their jaws. Some are missing teeth, yet they work with a frantic speed paid by the piece. The factory floor is dusted with the chemical. If a match is stepped on, it ignites with a snap and a puff of white smoke. The air is filled with these tiny explosions, small flashes of fire in the gloom. You are standing in a powder keg, watching women slowly dissolve their own skeletons to provide the city with a moment of light. We leave the industry behind and travel to the outskirts of the city, to a large red brick institution surrounded by high walls. This is the county asylum. It is where the city hides those who have broken under the strain of the noise, the poverty, and the toxins we have witnessed. You walk through the heavy iron gates. The building is vast, a labyrinth of corridors designed to intimidate. You enter the long gallery. It is a hallway that stretches for hundreds of feet, lined with locked doors. The air here smells of boiled cabbage, strong soap, and urine. It is cold. The heating is minimal. The silence is the most disturbing part. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a suppressed silence. Occasionally, it is broken by a sudden, echoing shout or the jingling of the heavy keys carried by the attendant. Peer into one of the rooms through the inspection hatch. It is a padded cell. The walls are covered in heavy canvas stuffed with horsehair or cork. There is no furniture, only a mattress on the floor. The treatment for mental illness in 1880 is largely containment and sedation. We recall the laudanum and chlorodyne from the chemist's shop here. They are used in bulk. Patients are kept in a state of chemical twilight. For those who are excitable, there are hydrotherapy baths. Patients are strapped into canvas tubs and submerged in water for hours, sometimes days. The skin becomes waterlogged and wrinkled. You walk past the airing court's small, high-walled yards where patients walk in circles for their daily hour of exercise. They walk on cinder paths, their heavy boots crunching rhythmically. They do not speak to each other. They gaze up at the same yellow fog that blankets the rest of the city. But here, even the view of the sky is barred. The asylum is a warehouse for the inconvenient. The epileptic, the depressed, the alcoholic, and the victims of neurotoxins like lead and mercury are all housed here together. It is a place of endless waiting. The corridor stretches on identical door after identical door, a monument to the Victorian obsession with categorization and control. We end our extended journey where many Londoners end their day, on the journey home. It is past midnight. The fog is at its thickest. You are waiting at a corner for the last omnibus. It emerges from the gloom, a hulking shape drawn by two exhausted horses. The horses are heads down, their breath steaming in the cold air. They slip slightly on the greasy cobblestones. You climb aboard. The bus is a small enclosed wooden box on wheels. Inside, the oil lamp flickers dimly, casting long shadows. The floor is covered in straw to catch the mud and spit of the passengers. The smell inside is intense. It is the concentrated scent of 12 strangers crammed into a tiny space. Wet wool coats, damp leather, pipe tobacco, unwashed bodies, gin. You sit on the narrow wooden bench. The velvet cushion is worn smooth and feels greasy to the touch. Opposite you sits a washerwoman asleep, her hands raw and red resting on her lap. Next to her, a clerk, his collar grey with the day's soot, stares blankly at the floor. The bus lurches forward. The iron wheels grind against the granite setts. Rumble, jolt, rumble. The vibration travels up through the floor and into your bones. The windows are steamed up with the breath of the passengers. You are sealed in a capsule of humidity. Outside, the gas lamps drift by like ghosts. You can see nothing of the city, only the reflection of the tired faces inside the glass. The journey is slow. The horses are tired. The driver shouts occasionally, his voice muffled by the glass. You are suspended in this limbo between the factory and the tenement, rocking back and forth in the dark. This is the rhythm of the city, a relentless grinding motion that carries you from one form of confinement to another. As the bus creaks to a halt at your stop, you step out into the silent, suffocating night, the taste of coal dust still on your tongue, ready to close your door against the world once more. The night is still heavy over London, the fog clinging to the rooftops like a wet shroud. But for one specific profession, the day has already begun. Before the factory whistles blow, before the maid lights the kitchen fire, the city must be woken. But in 1880 there are no electric alarms. There is only the knocker-upper. You stand on a deserted street corner at 3 a.m. Out of the mist emerges a figure. He is usually an old man, or perhaps a woman with a shawl wrapped tight against the damp. He carries a long bamboo pole, essentially a fishing rod. At the end of the pole is a small piece of wire or a hard knob of wood. He stops before a tenement building. He consults a slate hanging around his neck or a piece of chalk marked wood. He is checking his list. Mrs. Miller in room 3B needs to be up at 3:30 for the laundry. Mr. Smith in 4A needs to be up at 4 o'clock for the docks. Watch the motion. It is precise and practiced. He lifts the long pole. Tap, tap, tap. He taps on the glass of the third-floor window. It is not a violent knock that would wake the neighbours who have not paid for the service. It is a persistent, rhythmic rattle. He waits. He watches for movement behind the curtain. A candle flickers to life. A hand waves, the contract is fulfilled. He lowers the pole and moves to the next window. For the lower floors, he might use a pea shooter, a hollow reed or metal tube. He takes a mouthful of dried peas he aims. PFFT. The peas clatter against the pane like hail. It is a sharp, distinct sound that cuts through the deepest sleep. The knocker-upper walks miles every morning. His boots echo on the empty pavement. He is the clockwork of the working class. If he fails, the factory worker is late. If the worker is late, they are locked out, wages docked, perhaps fired. The entire economic engine of the district relies on this old man and his bamboo stick. He breathes the coldest, dampest air of the night. The miasma we feared earlier is his constant companion. His coat is damp with dew and soot. He moves silently from street to street, leaving a trail of waking lights behind him, a solitary figure initiating the daily grind of the industrial machine. As the knocker upper fades into the fog, another figure appears on the rooftops, silhouetted against the grey dawn. This is a child, perhaps 6 or 7 years old. He is small, deliberately kept small by malnutrition. He is a climbing boy. We move inside to the hearth. The Victorian fireplace is the heart of the home, but its arteries, the flues, are narrow, twisting labyrinths of brick measuring only 9 inches by 14 inches. They are choked with soot. This soot is highly flammable. If it builds up, the chimney catches fire. To clean it, the master sweep sends the boy. The boy enters the fireplace. The grate has been removed. He pulls a cap made of calico over his face to keep the soot out of his eyes. Though it rarely works, he begins to climb. He climbs by pressing his back against one side of the flue and his knees against the other. He inches up the dark, suffocating tunnel like a caterpillar. Scrape, shuffle, scrape. He carries a brush, but often he must use his bare hands to scrape the hard tarry deposits, creosote, from the bricks. The soot falls on him. It fills his nose, his ears, his mouth. It is a carcinogen. Chimney sweep's cancer, scrotal squamous cell carcinoma, is the first industrially recognized cancer, caused by the constant irritation of soot on the skin. The flue is confusing. It branches. It turns at sharp angles. It is pitch black. Boys get stuck. They wedge themselves in the narrow bends, their knees pressing against their chests, unable to move up or down. If a boy gets stuck, the master might light a small fire or burn straw in the grate below to encourage him to move faster. The heat rises, the smoke rises, the boy panics. Sometimes a bricklayer must be called to break open the wall to extract the child, dead or alive, suffocated by the very soot he was sent to clear. When the boy reaches the top, he pokes his brush out of the chimney pot. This is the signal. He takes a breath of the yellow fog, which tastes sweet compared to the air in the flue, and then begins the slide back down, bringing a cascade of black dust with him. He emerges into the hearth, a small black goblin. His elbows and knees are raw, the skin rubbed off by the brickwork. To harden the skin, the master might rub the wounds with brine salt water by the fire. The pain is intense. He gathers the soot into a sack. This soot is valuable. It is sold to farmers as fertilizer. The boy is merely the tool of extraction. He sleeps on the soot sacks in the master's cellar, black from head to toe, his lungs slowly filling with carbon, waiting for the next chimney. The sun is up now, or at least the sky has lightened to a bruised purple. We head to Houndsditch, or the Rag Fair. Here, the clothing of the dead and the destitute is recycled. In 1880, clothes are expensive. Fabric is precious. Nothing is wasted. The coat you saw the chimney sweep's master wearing, it was likely bought here. The market is a sea of old fabric. Heaps of clothing lie on the ground or hang from stalls. The smell is overpowering. Wet wool, mould, unwashed bodies, and the distinct, musty scent of old closets. Rag and bone men travel the city, collecting cast-offs. They bring them here. The clothes are sorted. A translator is a cobbler who specializes in old shoes. He takes a pair of boots found in a gutter. He cleans them. He patches the holes with bits of leather from another ruined shoe. He uses soot and grease to blacken them, hiding the cracks. He flattens the nails that protrude into the sole. Sells them as good boots. The first time it rains, the polish washes off, the cardboard packing dissolves, and the boot disintegrates. Then there is the shoddy trade old woolen rags. Socks, petticoats, uniforms are torn apart by a machine called a devil. The machine grinds the fabric back into raw fibre. This dust is incredibly fine. The workers in the shoddy mills breathe shoddy dust, which causes a specific fever. This recycled fibre is spun into new yarn and woven into shoddy cloth. It looks like wool, but it is weak. It tears easily. It provides little warmth. It is the fabric of the poor. When you buy a cheap coat in Victorian London, you are likely wearing the shredded remains of 1,000 strangers' socks, reassembled into a garment that will fall apart in a month. The rag market is also a disease exchange. A coat belonging to a smallpox victim is sold to a labourer. A shawl from a house with scarlet fever is bought for a child. The bacteria travel with the fabric. The fomites, inanimate objects carrying infection, circulate endlessly through the market stalls, transferring plagues from the dead to the living for the price of a few coppers. We follow the trail of the bone grubber to the outskirts of the industrial zone to the glue factory. If you thought the tannery was the worst smell in London, you have not stood downwind of the glue boiler. Bones are collected from every kitchen, restaurant, and butcher in the city. They are brought here in open carts. They are piled in the yard mountains of bleached, picked over ribs and femurs. The bones are crushed. A steam-powered crusher grinds them into fragments. The noise is a bone-shaking crunch, a vibration that rattles the teeth. The air is filled with bone dust, a white, chalky powder that coats the workers like flour. It tastes of calcium and dry rot. The crushed bones are shoveled into massive iron vats. Water is added. Heat is applied. They are boiled. As the collagen in the bones breaks down, it releases a smell that is thick, cloying, and gelatinous. It is the smell of concentrated animal protein, of soup gone horribly wrong. It sticks to the back of the throat. It is a greasy smell. The fat that rises to the top is skimmed off. This is bone grease. It is grey and rancid. It is sold to make cheap soap or candles. The gelatinous liquid that remains is the glue. It is poured out onto cooling trays to harden into brown, translucent slabs. The workers here are covered in a layer of grease and glue. Their clothes are stiff. Their hands are slippery. In the summer, the piles of bones in the yard attract millions of bluebottle flies. The maggots are so numerous that the piles of bones appear to move, shifting and undulating with the biological activity. The leftover bone mush, the spent bone, is not wasted. It is dried and ground into powder for fertilizer. The glue factory consumes the skeleton of the city and turns it into the adhesive that holds the cheap furniture of the tenements together. We end this section of our journey back on the street, seeking relief. We find ourselves in front of a cast iron structure on a busy thoroughfare. This is the public urinal, or pisotira. In a city of millions, drinking beer and tea all day, the need is constant. Before these structures were built, men simply used the alleyways or the wheels of parked carriages. The stench of ammonia in the streets was overwhelming. The Victorian solution is an ornate perforated iron screen, painted dark green, often with decorative scrollwork. It offers a modicum of visual privacy, but no olfactory, auditory, or sanitary protection. You step inside. The floor is slate or asphalt. It is wet, always wet. There is no flushing mechanism in the older models. There is simply a trough or a slab that drains directly into the sewer or a soak-away pit. The smell is eye-watering. It is pure, concentrated, fermenting urine. The iron walls are corroded by the acid. The slate is stained yellow and brown. But look at the design. The perforated ironwork allows the wind to blow through, supposedly to ventilate. But in reality, it blows the urinal dust, dried particles into the faces of passers-by. These places are also meeting points. In the anonymous, crowded city, they are nodes of social interaction, both licit and illicit. They are places to hide from the rain to share a secret, or to pass a bottle of gin. They are kept by an attendant sometimes, who might wash the slab down with a bucket of water once a day, if he feels like it. He sits in a small booth, breathing the fumes for 12 hours a day, his nose desensitized, taking a penny from those who wish to use the slightly more private water closet stall, if one exists. You step out, checking your boots for splashes. The iron scrollwork looks elegant against the grey sky, a decorative facade on a box of waste. You merge back into the crowd, walking carefully on the granite setts, trying to avoid the puddles that are not rain. We move now from the heat of the body and the steam of the washhouse to the deepest cold the city can manufacture. We travel to the banks of the Regent's Canal, to the subterranean cathedral of the icehouse. In 1880, ice is a commodity as precious as coal. It is the only defence against the rot of summer. It preserves the butcher's meat, cools the fevered brow in the hospital, and chills the champagne of the wealthy. But this ice is not made in a freezer. It is harvested. Enter the warehouse. It is a brick building with thick walls designed to insulate. You walk through the heavy wooden doors. The air temperature drops instantly. It smells of damp sawdust, wet straw, and a crisp, mineral scent that is entirely foreign to the sulphurous streets outside. In the centre of the floor is a vast circular pit, the ice well. It plunges 40, 50, sometimes 100 feet into the earth. It is lined with brick and cork. Look down into the abyss. It is filled with massive translucent blocks. This is Wenham Lake ice, imported all the way from America or Norway. It was cut from frozen lakes in winter, packed in sawdust on ships, and sailed across the ocean to this dark hole in London. The blocks are blue-white in the lantern light. They are stacked with geometric precision. Between each layer is a cushion of straw or sawdust to prevent them from fusing together. Workers, ice men, descend into the well on ladders. They wear heavy woolen coats and fingerless gloves. Their breath plumes in the frigid air. They use iron tongs and picks to maneuver the blocks. The sound is distinct. Crunch, slide. Thud. When a block is hauled up to the surface, it sweats. The warm, humid London air hits the sub-zero surface of the ice. Condensation forms immediately, running in rivulets down the sides, washing away the sawdust. But there is a darker side to the ice trade. Not all ice comes from the pristine lakes of Norway. Some of it is rough ice, harvested from the local canals and marshes of London during a hard freeze. This ice looks different. It is cloudy. It has bubbles. Suspended within it are the frozen ghosts of the canal, weeds, dead insects, perhaps the particulate matter of the coal smoke that settled on the water before it froze. This rough ice is sold cheaply to fishmongers and street vendors. It is used to make penny licks, small scoops of ice cream sold in glass cups. The customer licks the ice cream, licks the glass clean, and hands it back. The vendor wipes it with a rag and refills it. The ice melts. As it melts, it releases whatever was trapped in the water. The bacteria of the canal wake up. The chemical runoff from the factories, frozen in stasis, becomes liquid again. You watch a block of ice being loaded onto a cart. It is covered in a heavy, wet sack. It drips onto the cobblestones. It is a melting diamond, a temporary piece of winter captured and brought to the grime of the city, destined to dissolve into the grey slurry of the gutter, taking its chill and its secrets with it. We follow the pipes that run beneath the pavement to their source. We head to the vast industrial complexes that loom on the edge of the city, dominated by the skeletal iron frames of the gasimeters. We are entering the gasworks. This is the lung of London's light. Here, coal is roasted to release the gas that illuminates the streets, the theatres, and the drawing rooms. The smell hits you a mile away. It is a heavy, tarry, sulphurous stench. It smells of rotten eggs and asphalt. It coats the back of your throat with a chemical glaze. You enter the retort house. It is a scene from the Inferno. Rows of long horizontal ovens, retorts, are stacked floor to ceiling. They are heated to a cherry red glow. Inside these ovens, coal is baking. It is not burning, it is carbonizing in an oxygen-free environment. The stokers tend the fires. They are giants of men, stripped to the waist, their skin blackened by coal dust and sweat. The heat is intense, often reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the working areas. The air shimmers. Watch the charging. A stoker uses a long iron scoop, a fiddler, to throw fresh coal into the red-hot mouth of the retort. He must be precise. He must throw the coal 20 feet into a narrow tube, spreading it evenly. Clang, whoosh. The coal hits the heat, and gas erupts instantly. He slams the iron door shut and seals it with clay. For 6 hours the coal cooks. The gas, a mixture of hydrogen methane and carbon monoxide, bubbles off. It is collected in pipes that run up to the roof. What is left behind in the retort is coke, a grey, porous fuel that burns without smoke. When the time is up, the stoker opens the door. A blast of flame shoots out. He rakes the glowing coke out onto the stone floor. Hiss, crackle, he douses it with water. Steam explodes into the roof, mixing with the coal dust and the leaking gas. The atmosphere is toxic. The air is full of ammonia, tar vapor, and sulfur. The stokers suffer from gas workers' bronchitis. Their eyes are perpetually red and inflamed. They drink gallons of oatmeal water or beer to replace the sweat that pours off them. But the gas is not pure yet. It must be scrubbed. It passes through purifiers, large boxes filled with lime or iron oxide. These chemicals absorb the sulfur and ammonia. The waste product of this process is gas liquor and coal tar. The tar is a thick, black, viscous syrup. It accumulates in underground tanks. It is sold to make asphalt for the roads, creosote for fences, and increasingly synthetic dyes for the textile industry. The vibrant colours of Victorian fashion, the mauves and magentas, are born here in this black sludge. You stand in the shadow of a massive telescoping gasometer, rising and falling with the city's demand. It creaks and groans as it fills. You are standing next to a bomb. A single spark in the wrong place could level the district. You look up at the sky. The smoke from the gasworks joins the fog, adding its own yellow-grey contribution to the canopy. The light of London is born in darkness, heat and poison. We leave the iron and fire of the gasworks and travel to the muddy fringes of the metropolis. Here, the city eats the countryside. We are in a brick field. London is made of brick, the London stock brick, that ubiquitous yellow-grey masonry that defines the Victorian street. It comes from the clay beneath our feet. The landscape is scarred. The topsoil has been stripped away, revealing the heavy, sticky London clay. It is a desolate, muddy wasteland, dotted with smoking mounds. The workers here are families, men, women, and children. They work in the open air, exposed to the rain and the fog. First, the clay is dug. It is heavy, back-breaking work. The clay is left to weather over the winter, to be broken down by the frost. In the spring, it is mixed to make the bricks stronger and to help them burn. The clay is mixed with Spanish, a polite name for the ash and cinders collected by the dustmen in chapter 21. The waste of the city is folded back into the building blocks of the city. Watch the pug mill. It is a large wooden tub with a central shaft fitted with blades, turned by a weary horse walking in endless circles. The clay and ash are churned into a smooth paste. Squelch, grind, squelch. The moulder stands at a bench. He takes a clot of wet clay, he throws it into a wooden mould. Slap, he strikes off the excess with a wire. He tips the raw, wet brick onto a barrow. A good moulder can make 5,000 bricks a day. His hands are permanently stained, the clay working into the pores and under the fingernails until the skin itself seems made of earth. A child, the off-bearer, wheels the heavy barrow to the drying hacks. He runs back and forth, barefoot in the mud, carrying the weight of the future city. Then, the firing. These bricks are not fired in a kiln building, they are fired in a clamp. The raw bricks are stacked in a massive pyramid, interlayered with breeze, coke, and cinders. The entire stack is plastered over with mud. Fires are lit in tunnels at the base. The heat spreads slowly through the stack. The breeze inside the bricks ignites. The bricks burn from the inside out. A clamp burns for weeks. It smokes continuously. It releases a thick, white, acrid smoke that smells of burning sulfur and damp earth. This smoke drifts over the new suburbs, choking the residents of the very houses built from these bricks. At night, the brickfields glow with a dull, red infernal light. Vagrants often sleep near the clamps for warmth, huddled against the baking walls, breathing the sulphurous fumes. You pick up a finished brick. It is rough yellow and flecked with black spots, the remains of the ash. It is heavy. It is a piece of the earth, mixed with the refuse of the fireplace, fired by the cinders of industry. It is the solid atom of London. The night is cold, and the fog has returned with a vengeance. We seek warmth, but not in a home. We head to the beacon of light on the corner of the slum, the Gin Palace. It stands out like a diamond in a pile of coal. The facade is tiled in brilliant ceramics. The windows are plate glass, massive, expensive sheets that are etched with intricate frosted patterns of vines and stars. Gas lamps blaze outside, far brighter than the streetlights. You push open the heavy swinging doors. The transition is shocking. The noise hits you first, a roar of conversation, laughter, shouting, and the clinking of glass. Then the heat. The room is packed with bodies. The air is hot, humid, and smells of wet wool, pipe smoke, pickled onions, and the overwhelming juniper-scented vapour of Old Tom gin. The interior is designed to dazzle. Mirrors line the walls, reflecting the gaslight 1,000 times, creating an illusion of infinite space and infinite light. The bar is mahogany, polished to a deep shine. The fixtures are brass. This luxury is a calculated trap. For the slum dweller living in the grey, dark tenement room we visited in Chapter 17, this is paradise. It is the only place that is warm, bright, and beautiful. You step up to the bar. The counter is zinc or pewter. It is wet with spilled spirits. The drink of choice is gin. It is cheap. It is potent. It is often adulterated. To give it a kick, unscrupulous landlords might add sulfuric acid, turpentine, or oil of almonds. To make it taste fiery, they add cayenne pepper. To make it froth, they add sugar and alum. Watch the customers. A mother stands at the bar, a baby in one arm, a glass of gin in the other. She dips her finger in the spirit and rubs it on the baby's gums to quieten it. A group of labourers stand by a barrel, spending their day's wages in an hour. There are no chairs. The gin palace is designed for standing, for drinking quickly, and for making room for the next customer. It is a factory of intoxication. Behind the bar, huge wooden barrels are stacked, painted in bright colours with names like the Cream of the Valley or Mountain Dew. They look festive, but they contain the chemical oblivion of the working class. The floor is covered in sawdust to soak up the spit and the spills. By closing time, it will be a sodden brown mush. You look into the mirror behind the bar. You see your own reflection, pale and tired, framed by the etched glass and the golden letters advertising cordials. You are surrounded by light, but it is a harsh, artificial glare that exposes the poverty of the patrons rather than hiding it. You finish your drink. It burns the throat. You feel the warmth spreading in your stomach, a false fire to combat the London chill. You push back out through the doors, and the darkness of the street seems twice as black as before. We end our journey in the quietest place in London. Not the church, but the structure that sits behind it, or sometimes near the workhouse. The mortuary. The dead house. In a city with such a high mortality rate, death is a logistical problem. In the crowded tenements, a body might remain in the living room for days before burial, the family eating and sleeping beside the corpse. To combat this sanitary hazard, the dead house was built. You enter. It is a small stone building. It is unheated. The air is colder than the street. It smells of damp stone, carbolic acid, and the faint, sweet scent of decay that no amount of scrubbing can erase. Inside, there are rows of slate slabs. Slate is used because it stays cold and is easy to wash. On the slabs lie the unknowns, the bodies pulled from the Thames by the toshers, the vagrants found frozen in the brickfields, the elderly paupers from the workhouse. They are covered with rough linen sheets. A searcher of the dead is at work. Historically, these were older women appointed by the parish to examine the corpse and determine the cause of death. By 1880, it is becoming more professional, but the practice persists. She lifts the sheet. A man, middle-aged, his skin grey and mottled. She checks for signs of violence, for the telltale spots of typhus, for the emaciation of starvation. There is a glass partition in the wall. The public can peer through. People come here to look for missing relatives, a face pressed against the glass, eyes scanning the row of silent forms. Is that him? Is that father? The lighting is dim, usually a single gas jet hissing high on the wall. The shadows are long. The only sound is the dripping of water from a tap in the corner, used to hose down the slabs. Drip, drip. This is the final resting place of the London poor before the common grave. It is clean, stark, and utterly indifferent. The body has been stripped of its rags, stripped of its story, reduced to a physical object awaiting disposal. You stand in the cold silence. You have seen the cycle of the city. Fog that fills the lungs, the food that poisons the gut, the labour that breaks the back, and the final cold slab of slate. You step out of the dead house. The fog has lifted slightly. A faint grey light is touching the rooftops. The city is waking up again. The knocker-upper is tapping on the windows. The chimney sweep is climbing the flue. The washerwoman is boiling the water. The machine of Victorian London begins to turn once more, grinding on, indifferent to the lives it consumes, beautiful and terrible in its relentless, smoky grandeur. We return to the grim brick embrace of the workhouse, specifically to a long, draughty shed where the silence is broken only by the sound of tearing fibre. This is the oakum shed. If you are an inmate here, you do not sit idle, you must pay for your gruel. The currency is oakum. Oakum is essentially loose fibre obtained by untwisting and picking apart old tarred ropes. These ropes come from the Royal Navy ships or the merchant docks. They are thick, heavy hawsers, stiffened by years of salt water and hardened tar. They are cut into short lengths, perhaps a foot long. Your task from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is to take this rock-hard rope and reduce it back to a pile of soft, fluffy hemp fibre. This fibre will be mixed with fresh tar and used to caulk the seams of wooden ships, sealing them against the ocean. You sit on a low wooden bench. There is no backrest. In your lap lies a bundle of the junk, the old rope. Pick up a piece. It feels like wood. It smells of Stockholm tar, a sharp, smoky, pine-like scent that is initially pleasant but soon becomes nauseating. It coats your hands. It stains your skin a deep, indelible brown. You must use your fingers. There are no tools. You hook your thumbnail into the twist of the rope and pull. Snap. A single strand comes loose. It is stiff. You must roll it against your thigh. Your trousers are made of rough corduroy for this purpose, until the fibers separate. The friction is constant. Within an hour, your fingertips are tender. Within 3 hours, the skin is worn thin. By the afternoon, your cuticles are bleeding. The tar works its way into the cracks in your skin. It stings. The air in the shed is filled with dust. As the rope disintegrates, it releases a cloud of fine hemp particles and dried tar dust. It shimmers in the shafts of light from the high windows. You breathe it in, it dries the throat. It irritates the sinuses. The shed is punctuated by the dry, hacking coughs of the pickers. You are expected to produce a specific weight of oakum, per Dalton Y, often 3 or 4 pounds. It sounds like little, but oakum is light as a feather. To make a pound of fluff from a solid rope takes hours of agonizing repetitive picking. If you drop a piece, or if you hide unpicked rope in your pile to make weight, the taskmaster will find it. Punishment is a reduction in rations. No bread, only water. You look at your hands. They are hooked into claws. The tar has sealed your pores. You are unmaking the tools of the empire, fibre by fibre, until your own fingerprints are erased by the friction. We leave the workhouse and travel to Waterloo Station. But we are not going to the coast for a holiday. We are going to a private platform, separated from the hustle of the main terminal by discreet iron gates. This is the terminus of the London Metropolis Railway. In 1880, London is full. The dead are literally bursting from the ground. The old churchyards are overflowing, the soil rising 6 feet above street level, packed with layers of coffins. The smell of miasma from these graveyards is a public health crisis. The solution is to move the dead out of the city by train to the vast Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey. You enter the station. It is quiet. The walls are lined with glazed white tiles, easy to wash. The air smells of lilies, beeswax, and the faint, sweet scent of formaldehyde. There are waiting rooms, first class, second class, and third class. Even in death, the hierarchy remains. The first class room is furnished with velvet armchairs and heavy drapes to muffle the sound of sobbing. The third class room is a bare hall with wooden benches. The train arrives. It is painted a sombre black and brown. The carriages are divided. There are compartments for the living mourners and separate, windowless vans for the coffins. Watch the loading. The coffins are slid onto racks. A first-class coffin is oak, polished and heavy with brass fittings. A third-class coffin is pine, painted black, often just a thin shell. You board the train. The whistle blows, not a sharp shriek, but a respectful low tone. The train pulls out, sliding through the grey tenements of Lambeth, gathering speed. The journey takes 40 minutes. For 40 minutes, the living ride with the dead. The landscape changes from the soot-stained brick of the city to the green fields of the country. But inside the carriage, the mood is static. The windows are often draped with crepe. The air is still. When you arrive at Brookwood, there are 2 stations. One for Anglicans, one for non-conformists. You disembark directly into the cemetery. It is a city of the dead, a vast park planted with Wellingtonia trees, giant sequoias. The silence here is profound. There is no roar of traffic, only the wind in the pine trees and the hiss of the steam engine waiting to take the mourners back to the land of the living. You watch the coffin being lowered into the sandy soil. It is deep, it is dry, it is far away from the water pumps of Soho. This is the industrialization of grief, a railway line dedicated solely to the transport of bodies, a one-way ticket out of the smoke. We return to the city, to a side street in the meat-packing district. We are guided by a smell that is arguably worse than the tannery or the glue factory because it is a smell associated with food, yet corrupted. We are entering the tallow chandler's workshop. London needs light. Before gas and electricity were universal, there were candles. And the cheapest candles are made of tallow animal fat. The chandler receives the fat that even the butcher rejected. The rough fat, the suet, the offcuts, the scrapings from the slaughterhouse floor. It arrives in barrels, often rancid, grey, and buzzing with flies. He tips the fat into a large copper vat. He adds water and perhaps a little acid to help separate the fibers. He lights the fire, the fat boils, bubble, spit, hiss. The smell is thick, greasy, and cloying. It coats the inside of your nose. It is the smell of 1,000 mutton chops burning at once. It permeates the brickwork of the shop. The chandler himself shines with a layer of grease. His apron is stiff with it. He skims the impurities off the top, the cracklings. These are pressed into blocks and sold as dog food. The purified fat is ladled into moulds. A string of cotton wick is suspended in the center. The fat cools and hardens. It turns a yellowish grey. These are dip candles. They are soft. In the heat of a summer evening, a tallow candle will droop and bend over in its holder. When burned, it smokes. It produces a thick black soot that stains the ceiling, and it smells. As the fat burns, it releases the odor of the animal it came from. A room lit by cheap tallow candles smells of hot grease. The wick requires constant attention. It does not burn away completely. It forms a snuff, a blackened, carbonized mushroom at the top of the flame. If you do not trim it with snuffers every 20 minutes, the flame becomes dim and smoky, and the candle may gutter, spilling hot grease onto the table. The chandler works all day in this grease fog. The floor is slippery. The danger of fire is extreme. A spilled vat of boiling tallow is essentially a napalm bomb. Many chandlers burn down, their shops turning into towering infernos of liquid fat that water cannot extinguish. You leave the shop, checking your boots. They are coated in a fine film of airborne grease. You will smell of the chandler's vat for the rest of the day. The night has turned cold and wet. We seek a different kind of warmth, one that offers an escape from the sensory assault of the Victorian street. We head east, to the docks of Limehouse, to a nondescript door in a dark alleyway. You push the door open. You descend a short flight of wooden steps. The air here is warm, stagnant, and incredibly sweet. It is the smell of roasted peanuts and caramelized sugar. This is the scent of smoking opium. The room is low-ceilinged. The windows are boarded up. Time does not exist here. The only light comes from the small oil lamps that sit in the center of the wooden bunks. The bunks are stacked too high, lining the walls. They are made of rough wood, polished smooth by the bodies of the smokers. There are no mattresses, only bamboo mats and hard porcelain or wooden pillows. The smokers lie on their sides. They are silent. Their eyes are glazed, staring at nothing. Watch the ritual. The server, often an old Chinese man or woman, prepares the pipe. They take a long bamboo pipe with a ceramic bowl. They dip a needle into a small pot of opium treacle, dark sticky paste. They hold the treacle over the flame of the lamp. It bubbles and swells, turning into a hot, soft bead. They deftly insert it into the bowl of the pipe. They hand the pipe to the smoker. The smoker holds the bowl over the lamp flame and inhales deeply. One long, slow breath. The opium vaporizes. The smoke is thick and blue. It hangs in the breathless air of the room. You breathe it in just by standing there. It is a sedative. Your limbs feel heavy. The noise of the docks outside fades away. The worry about the rent, the hunger, the cold. It all dissolves into a warm golden haze. There is no violence here. The den is quieter than a church. Men and women, sailors and labourers, lie side by side, united in their stupor, but look closely at the smokers. Their skin is sallow, tinged with yellow, the opium tint. They are often emaciated. Opium suppresses the appetite. They do not eat. They only smoke. Their clothes are ragged, their hygiene neglected. They lie in the same position for hours, sometimes days. The air is recycled. The smoke exhaled by one man is inhaled by the next. The den is a closed loop of intoxication. You watch the shadows dance on the ceiling. The only sound is the hiss of the lamps and the soft gurgle of the pipes. It is a womb like oblivion, a dark corner of the city where the mind can finally disconnect from the brutal reality of the body. We emerge from the den, blinking, back into the grey light of dawn. The streets are slick with the London mud we encountered in Chapter 6. Standing at the intersection, broom in hand, is a figure who is as much a part of the pavement as the stones themselves, the crossing sweeper. He is invisible to most. He is usually a boy, barefoot, or an old man with a wooden leg. He stakes a claim to a specific crossing, a patch of road between two curbs. His job is Sisyphusian. He sweeps the liquid manure and coal sludge to the side, creating a narrow, semi-clean path for pedestrians to cross without ruining their boots or hemlines. Watch him, he sweeps, slap. A carriage passes, churning the mud back onto his path. He sweeps it again, swish. Slap, he does not ask for a fee. He relies on the conscience of the passerby. A gentleman might toss him a halfpenny. A lady might ignore him entirely. He touches his cap, if he has one, to everyone. He stands in the middle of the traffic. The danger is constant. Horses slip, wheels skid. He must dodge the hooves and the iron rims. He breathes the exhaust of the horses directly. He is splashed by every passing wheel. His clothes are a patchwork of found rags, stiff with the dried mud of the street. He has no shelter. When it rains, he gets wet. When it snows, he sweeps snow. He is a human marker buoy in the river of traffic, but he sees everything. He knows who is visiting whom. He knows which gentleman is entering the brothel, which clerk is late for work, which lady has a new lover. He is the silent observer of the street corner. Yet, socially, he does not exist. He is beneath the working class. He is a scavenger of space, selling a clean footstep in a dirty city. You toss him a coin. It lands in the mud. He picks it up with a hand that is the same color as the street. He nods. You cross the path he has cleared, your boots staying relatively dry, while behind you, the sludge slowly oozes back to reclaim the stones. We step off the muddy street and duck into a low doorway near Fleet Street. The noise of the city is muffled here, replaced by a rhythmic, mechanical heartbeat, thump-clack, thump-clack. We have entered the cramped workshop of a printer producing penny dreadfuls. These cheap, sensational pamphlets are the television of the Victorian poor. Tales of Varney, the vampire, or Sweeney Todd are churned out here by the thousands to be sold for a penny a week. The air in the shop is heavy with a specific chemical tang. It is the smell of printer's ink. In 1880, this ink is a mixture of lampblack, soot, and varnish boiled linseed oil. It is thick, sticky, and stains everything it touches. The printer's hands are permanently dyed black. The ink has worked its way into the halls of his fingerprints and the cracks of his knuckles. Watch the pressman. He works a heavy iron Stanhope press. He takes a ball, a leather pad stuffed with wool and soaked in ink, and beats it against the type. Tap, tap, tap. This inks the lead letters. The paper is cheap. It is pulp paper, made not of sturdy linen rags, but of wood pulp and straw. It is coarse, greyish, and brittle. If you hold it up to the light, you can see the uneven fibres. It absorbs the ink greedily, blurring the letters slightly. He places a sheet of this paper onto the frame. He folds the frisket down. He turns the handle to roll the bed under the platen. Then, the physical effort, he pulls the heavy iron bar towards him. This is pulling the devil by the tail. The platen descends, pressing the paper onto the inked type with hundreds of pounds of pressure. He releases the bar. He rolls the bed out. He peels the paper off. The wet ink glistens. The smell of the linseed oil is potent. The pages are hung on lines across the ceiling to dry, like laundry. The room is a forest of drying horror stories. The typesetter stands at a case in the corner. He picks up tiny lead letters, one by one, clicking them into his composing stick. Lead again. He handles it all day. He licks his fingers to separate the stuck pieces. The sweet taste of lead is a constant companion. He is slowly poisoning himself to print stories about fictional murders while the real killer sits in the typecase under his fingertips. The fog has thickened to a blind stupor, perfect for the business of the night. We travel to a quiet churchyard on the edge of the city. The gates are locked, but we slip through a gap in the fence. We are here to meet the resurrection men, the body snatchers. Though the Anatomy Act of 1832 theoretically ended the trade, the demand for fresh corpses by medical schools still outstrips the supply. The grave robber is a shadow economy specialist. The resurrection man does not dig up the whole coffin. That takes too long and leaves too much mess. He works with surgical precision in the dark. He finds a fresh grave. The soil is still loose. He lays a canvas sheet on the grass to catch the dirt, ensuring no sod is misplaced. He digs a square hole not at the center, but strictly over the head of the coffin. He uses a wooden shovel. A metal shovel would ring against the stones. Wood is silent. Sump scoop, soft thud. When he reaches the coffin lid, he uses iron hooks to pry up just the top third. The wood snaps with a dull crack muffled by the earth. Now comes the extraction. He drops a rope with a hook or a noose into the hole. He maneuvers it around the corpse's neck or under the arms. Then he pulls. The body, stiff with rigor mortis, is dragged out of the coffin, up through the narrow tunnel of earth, and onto the grass. It is stripped of its shroud. Stealing the shroud is a felony, but stealing the body is only a misdemeanor. The shroud is tossed back into the grave. The body is sacked, shoved into a burlap sack and tied tight. It is folded, knees to chest, to make it smaller. The hole is filled in. The turf is replaced. The entire operation takes less than an hour. The resurrection man lifts the heavy cold sack onto his back. It smells of damp earth and the faint, sickly sweet scent of early decomposition. He melts back into the fog, carrying a subject destined for the dissecting table we visited in chapter 16. The grave looks undisturbed, but beneath the 6 feet of soil, the coffin is empty. If the resurrection man is the thief of death, the undertaker is its stage manager. We enter the funeral parlour, a shop front draped in heavy black velvet. Window display features a miniature coffin, a wreath of porcelain flowers, and a black-bordered card advertising funerals of distinction. Inside, the air is still and smells of sawdust, French polished shellac, and mothballs. The undertaker is a master of the black trade. He sells grief. Look at the fabrics. The Victorians are obsessed with mourning crepe. This is a crimped silk fabric treated with gum and resin to make it stiff and dull. It is matte black. It reflects no light. A widow is expected to wear this scratchy, uncomfortable fabric for a year and a day. It is known as weeping crepe because if it gets wet in the London rain, the black dye runs, staining the skin and underwear a deep bruised purple. Dye is often toxic, containing arsenic or chromium, causing rashes on the grieving skin. The undertaker also hires out mutes. These are professional mourners, men who stand at the door of the deceased house, clad in black, holding a staff draped in crepe. Their job is to look sad and silent. They are often paid in gin. A mute might stand for hours in the freezing fog, swaying slightly from intoxication. A paid statue of sorrow. In the back room, the coffins are made. Elm for the poor, oak for the middle class, lead-lined for the rich, or for those dying of infectious diseases. The lead lining seals the smell and the fluids inside. The undertaker solders the lead lid shut with a hot iron. The hiss of the soldering iron sealing the dead away is the final sound of the funeral preparation. He polishes the brass handles. He arranges the ostrich feathers on the hearse black feathers for an adult, white for a child. It is a theatre of shadows, where every nail, every ribbon, and every feather has a price listed in the ledger. We descend now, not into a grave, but under the river itself. We go to Wapping, to the entrance shaft of the Thames Tunnel. Once hailed as the 8th wonder of the world, the first tunnel built under a navigable river, it has become something else by 1880. A damp, dimly lit bazaar of the bazaar. You walk down the grand staircase. The air gets colder and clamamier with every step. You are entering a tube of brick beneath the weight of the Thames. The tunnel is composed of 2 arches. It is lit by gas jets that struggle against the moisture. The walls weep. Water from the river above seeps through the brickwork, dripping constantly plip, plop. The floor is slick with slime. The arches are lined with stalls. This is an underground market. But who shops here? The stalls sell cheap trinkets to tourists and idlers. A present from the Thames Tunnel is painted on mugs, pincushions, and gin flasks. The atmosphere is suffocating. The air is stagnant, recycled by the lungs of the stallholders who spend their days in this twilight. The smell is distinct: river mud, unwashed humanity, gas fumes, and damp mould. It is a haunt for the homeless and the unfortunates. At night, for a penny, you can enter the tunnel to sleep. The arches provide shelter from the wind, but not the damp. People huddle in the shadows of the stalls, sleeping against walls that vibrate with the passing of the ships overhead. It is a cathedral of engineering turned into a damp cellar. The stallholders sit wrapped in blankets, their wares slowly rusting in the humid air, waiting for a customer brave enough to descend into the dripping dark. We emerge from the tunnel and head to a rough district, perhaps Field Lane. We hear a noise, a dull roar of hundreds of children's voices. We have found a ragged school, founded for the destitute children who are too poor, even for the penny schools. These institutions are often housed in converted stables, lofts, or old warehouses. You enter the room, the smell hits you instantly. It is the smell of unwashed wool, wet leather, and hundreds of bodies that have never seen a bathtub. It is a steamy smell. The room is packed. There are no desks. The children sit on benches or on the floor. They are ragged in the literal sense. Many are barefoot. Their clothes are oversized jackets pinned together, or men's trousers cut down and tied with rope. The teacher stands at the front with a cane. Discipline is harsh. The noise is constant. The lesson is often reading from the Bible. Education is seen as a way to save their souls, if not their bodies. Look at the children. Many have scrofula, swollen glands in the neck, a form of tuberculosis. Many have ringworm, leaving bald, scaly patches on their heads. They cough constantly. But there is a meal. A large cauldron of soup or porridge sits in the corner. For many, this is the only reason they are here. They stare at the pot with hungry, hollow eyes. The windows are high and small. The room is dim. Dust motes dance in the shafts of light. Dust composed of skin cells, fabric fibers, and the dirt of the street. It is a place of hope. Yes, but a gritty, desperate hope. You watch a small boy holding a slate board trying to write a letter with a piece of chalk. His hands are cracked from the cold. He wipes his nose on his sleeve and focuses on the letter, trying to carve a way out of the slum with a piece of limestone. We climb 4 flights of stairs in a tenement in the East End, the air getting hotter and drier with every step. We are heading to the source of the heavy wool coat you are wearing. We are entering a sweatshop. The room is small, with a sloping ceiling. The windows are sealed shut to keep the humidity high necessary for working the wool. Inside, 5 or 6 men and women are working by the light of a single oil lamp. They are the sweated tailors. They work not for a wage, but by the piece. They are subcontractors of subcontractors, the bottom of the industrial chain. Watch the tailor. He sits cross-legged on a table, the traditional tailor's posture. He sits this way for 14, 16, sometimes 18 hours a day. His legs are permanently bowed. His ankles are swollen. He suffers from tailor's bunion, a callus on the side of the foot from pressing against the hard wood. He is sewing a heavy overcoat. The fabric is thick, rough tweed. It is heavy. He must manipulate it with his fingers, pushing the needle through layers of stiff canvas and wool. Push-pull. Push-pull. His fingers are calloused, pierced by thousands of accidental needle pricks. The needle is his entire life. Beside him on a coal stove sits the goose. This is a tailor's iron. It is a solid block of iron, weighing 12 to 14 pounds, shaped like a goose's neck. It is heated until it is hissing hot. He takes a mouthful of water from a cup PFFT. He sprays a fine mist of water onto the wool. He lifts the heavy goose and slams it down. Steam explodes from the fabric. Smell is intense. It is the smell of wet, singed animal hair. It is the smell of hot iron and damp dust. The steam fills the room, making the air thick and unbreathable. This steam carries the fibers of the wool deep into the lungs. Tailors have the highest rate of phthisis, pulmonary tuberculosis, of any trade. They sit knee to knee, coughing into the very fabric that will be sold in a Regent Street shop tomorrow. His eyes are red and rimmed with inflammation. He is straining to see black thread on black wool in dim light. He is slowly going blind. But he stitches on, a machine of flesh and bone, turning the raw material of the empire into the uniform of the gentleman. We step back out into the night. But this time we walk with authority. We are following the heavy, rhythmic tread of the peeler, the constable of the Metropolitan Police. He is a silhouette in blue wool. His uniform is a suit of armour against the weather and the populace. The tunic is high-collared, stiff, and fastened with pewter buttons that must be polished daily. Around his neck, hidden beneath the collar, is a stiff leather stock, meant to protect him from garroting strangulation, but which mostly serves to keep his head rigidly upright and chafe his neck. He walks his beat. It is a specific route, timed to the minute. He walks at a steady pace of 2.5 miles per HR. He must not hurry. He must not linger. He is a metronome of order. Look at his boots. They are Blutchers or Wellingtons, heavy leather with hobnailed soles. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound of a policeman's boots is a distinct signal in the fog. It warns the thief to hide and the householder that all is well. On his belt hangs a wooden truncheon, lignum vitae wood, heavy and hard. In his pocket, a rattle latter replaced by a whistle to summon help. But his most vital tool is on his belt, the bullseye lantern. It is a heavy metal lantern burning oil. It has a thick, convex lens that magnifies the weak flame into a piercing beam. He unclips it. He slides the shutter open. A cone of yellow light cuts through the fog. The smell of the lantern is hot oil and heated metal. He holds it against his chest for warmth. He shines the light into doorways, down cellar steps into the faces of sleeping vagrants. "Move along," he says. His voice is tired. He checks the doors of the shops. He rattles the handles. If one is open, he must investigate. He walks into the dark warehouse, his single beam of light dancing on the crates, listening for the breathing of a burglar. He is alone. For 8 hours he walks the grey, wet streets, an isolated figure of authority. His cape gets heavy with rain, his feet numb with cold. He is the watchman of the sleeping city, pacing the boundary between the law-abiding silence and the chaotic noise of the crime that lurks in the shadows. It is 4 a.m., the coldest hour, the dead time of the city. But on a street corner near a cab stand, there is a glow of red warmth. It is the brazier of a coffee stall. This is the Victorian diner. It is a wooden cart with a canvas awning. Set up nightly, a coke fire burns in an iron basket, heating large tin urns. The smell is inviting, if deceptive. It smells of roasting beans and hot sugar. But the coffee is often a concoction of burnt toast crusts, baked carrots, chicory, and perhaps a few actual coffee beans boiled into a thick black liquor. You approach the stall. The steam rising from the urns is a comfort. You order a cup. It is served in a thick, chipped ceramic mug. It is scalding hot and very sweet. The sugar hides the bitterness of the adulterants. On the counter are stacks of doorsteps, slices of bread an inch thick smeared with the yellow butter we met at breakfast. There are also slabs of fruit cake, dark and heavy, and perhaps hard-boiled eggs. The clientele is a cross-section of the night. A handsome cab driver, beating his arms to keep warm, stands next to a flower girl whose violets are wilting in her basket. A printer's devil, his face smeared with ink, rubs shoulders with a fallen woman taking a break from her beat. For a penny, they buy warmth. They stand around the brazier, holding their mugs with both hands, the steam softening the grime on their faces. They do not talk much. They eat quickly. The stall holder is a fixture of the night. He knows everyone. He wipes the counter with a rag that has seen better decades. He stirs the urn with a long spoon. You drink the coffee. It tastes burnt and earthy. It settles in your stomach like a hot stone, but it wakes you up. It fuels you for the last stretch of the night, until the sun or the grey lightening of the fog signals the end of the shift. If the peeler catches you, you may end up here. We travel to North London to the imposing radial walls of Pentonville Prison. We are entering the model prison, designed to crush the spirit through architecture. You are processed in silence. You are stripped, bathed, and given a uniform with broad arrows printed on it. But the defining feature of your new life is the mask. Whenever you leave your cell, you must wear a cap with a long peak that comes down over your face, with 2 eye holes cut in it. You are a faceless ghost. This is the separate system. You must not see another prisoner. You must not speak to another prisoner. You are utterly alone. You enter your cell. It is 13 feet long, 7 feet wide. The walls are whitewashed brick. The floor is slate. It is clean. Terrifyingly clean. It smells of lime wash and carbolic acid. There is no dust here, only sterile solitude. In the corner is a hammock rolled up, a stool, a table, and a copper basin. Your work is in the cell. You might be a cobbler or a weaver, or you might be sentenced to hard labour. In the corner stands the crank. It is a box with a heavy iron handle. Your punishment is to turn this handle. It is weighted to offer resistance. You must turn it 10,000 times a day. Grind, grind, grind. It serves no purpose. It grinds nothing. It produces nothing. It simply exhausts you. A counter on the box ticks off the revolutions. If you do not meet your quota, you get no food. The silence is absolute. The prison is designed so that the guards wear felt slippers. You cannot hear them approaching. You are always watched through the spy hole in the door, but you never know when. You sit on your stool. You turn the crank. Your arm burns. Your mind wanders. The whitewashed walls seem to close in. The isolation leads to prison psychosis. Men talk to themselves. They hallucinate. They scream in the night, their voices echoing down the empty, vaulted corridors, only to be muffled by the heavy iron doors. You are a number. You are a machine. You are a known in a box of white brick, turning a handle to nowhere. We end our journey by leaving. We travel to the East India docks. The fog is lifting slightly, revealing a forest of masts. We are boarding a steamship bound for America or Australia. We are going to steerage. You walk up the gangplank, carrying your entire life in a wooden trunk. You are directed down. Down past the promenade deck, down past the cabins. Down into the hold. The steerage compartment is a vast open cavern below the waterline. It is fitted with rows of rough wooden bunks, stacked 3 high. There are no partitions. You are sleeping in a dormitory with hundreds of strangers. The air here is already stale. It smells of bilge water, the stagnant, oily water that collects in the bottom of the ship. It smells of tar, unwashed bedding, and the anxiety of departure. You claim a bunk. The mattress is straw, thin and lumpy. The ceiling is low, you can barely stand upright. The pipes and beams of the ship run overhead, sweating condensation. The ship's engines start. Thrum, thrum, thrum. The vibration travels through the steel hull and into your bunk. you are living inside a drum. As the ship moves out into the Thames estuary, the motion begins. The floor tilts. The light from the few portholes swings across the ceiling. Seasickness strikes. There are few buckets. The smell of vomit joins the smell of the bilge. The ventilation is poor. The hatches are often battened down in rough weather, sealing you in the dark, heaving hold. You lie in your bunk, listening to the water rushing against the steel plates just inches from your head. Rush, hiss, boom. You are leaving the smog, the cesspools, the alum bread, and the arsenic wallpaper behind. But you are trading them for weeks of confinement in a wooden box on the grey Atlantic. You close your eyes, rocking with the ship, hoping that the air in the new world will be cleaner than the yellow fog of the city you have left behind. The steamship disappears over the horizon, its smoke blending into the grey Atlantic sky. We return one last time to the heart of the metropolis, as the bells of St. Paul's Cathedral toll the midnight hour. The Victorian era was a time of noise, of grinding gears, of shouting hawkers, and of the relentless hiss of steam. But now, as we pull back from the microscopic details of the louse and the atom of coal dust, the city begins to settle. The fires in a million grates burn down to embers. The smoke that has choked the sky for decades begins to thin, if only for a few hours. The fog remains, a faithful watchdog guarding the sleeping streets. Think of the places we have visited. The workhouse is silent now. The oakum pickers asleep in their narrow cots, their raw fingers resting on rough wool. The gym palace has closed its heavy doors, the gas lights extinguished, the mirrors reflecting only the empty sawdust-covered floor. The River Thames continues its slow, sludge-filled journey to the sea, carrying the secrets of the Toshas and the memories of the empire beneath its dark surface. The Pea Souper still clings to the brickwork, but the frantic energy of survival has paused. The crossing sweeper has curled up in a doorway. The match girl has laid down her head. Even the rats in the sewers have retreated to their nests. We have walked through the mud, breathed the arsenic, tasted the alum, and touched the velvet. We have seen that beneath the gilded surface of the world's greatest empire lay a foundation of grit, grime, and shadow. But for now, the struggle is over. The heavy curtains are drawn, the world is muffled. The chemicals have done their work, the machines have stopped their spinning, and the great smog holds the city in a cold, quiet embrace. History does not disappear, it merely sleeps waiting to be uncovered, layer by layer, just as we have done tonight.